Once again, we're peeling back the layers of the orange that's known as Laika. It's filled with grapes and it's filled with raisins. It's filled with raisins that come to life and talk to you. Or they once did. If you know anything about Laika Studios, that's a reference. And everybody's gathered around the fireplace, the internet fireplace, the Twitch fireplace, to ask the same question they ask each and every week. And that is, hey, did you see this one?
In a world where creativity is buried and dead, a mysterious movie studio lies in waiting, tinkering away with the tools used for captivating audiences, with heartwarming stories crafted through the exquisite art of stop-frame animation. It's time to take your first steps, or perhaps revisit them, on a whimsical journey where the magic of this unique technique unfolds, immersing you in a world of wonder and enchantment and shadow. But amidst the captivating visuals, when the world seems dark and life feels like a heavy raincoat, Hey, Did You See This One? Reminds you to slow down and take things frame by frame.
That's right. Hey, everybody. Have you heard the news? It's about the man missing link. It is, hey, did you see this one? Episode 123, season 2, episode 23. We are back again for frame by frame. Hey, did you like this one? Last week, I forgot to ask, hey, did you like this one? But we sang its praises so high, I don't think it was necessary. This week, I will try to ask that question. We are here, we are fluent in English, and we are making sure that everybody knows. Why did I say fluent in English? That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know.
Yeah, make no assumptions, guys. You never know what's gonna happen around here.
I was just saying words, and I wanted to say something like snappy, and then that came out, so canceled in the first 8 seconds of the show. We have a new guest. We have a new guest this week.
Yeah, apparently our Italian-American friend, Naveed Khan.
Yo, I never know.
Uh-oh. Now Naveed's canceled.
I have been mistaken as an Italian many times. So take that as you like. Or should I say, as you like.
As you like.
All right, let's just get those out at the top and then proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, people of Earth, humans around the world, please welcome to the show Naveed Khan. Naveed Khan, thank you for coming to the show for the first time. It's interesting. We were talking about this before the show, but your DNA is actually all over this show. We used to use your Zoom meetings to do the show, and I think Steve's little thing in the bottom left corner said Naveed Khan on several episodes.
So many episodes, yeah.
That's fantastic that you're here finally. I feel like we asked this. You're one of those guests that we've asked to be on the show like a year ago, possibly two, and finally, now that we're in the all guests era, we have you on, and we're gonna talk Laika. We're gonna talk Missing Link. We are of course talking about Missing Link this week, but before we get to that, we play a game each and every week on social media. Hello, Space Get Tim. Welcome to the chat. We play a game on social media each and every week where I put up a picture of the poster of the movie we're doing zoomed in, and I have people online guess. This week, unlike last week, this week and the week before, this week there weren't very many guesses. There were a lot of incorrect guesses. I will say people wanted it to be Babe, Pig in the City. People wanted it to be, there was another one that people, Charlotte's Web, I guess. Somebody said Basic Instinct. They were making a joke because it was zoomed in on Mr. Link's little patchy area here. He's making a little blue joke. Steve's frowning. However, there were a couple of correct guesses, but unfortunately, only one person gave their message to the world. But that's
he does have a pig nose, so I understand all the pig stuff. But
yeah, Charlotte's Web. That was
Charlotte's Web is a pig.
There's a pig.
Yeah, right. Charlotte's Web, I thought, is a pig talking to a spider, as is tradition. So
yeah,
just
it's a pig learning about mortality.
Yeah, it's probably an allegory for 18 things, like Animal Farm. I learned about Animal Farm and Charlotte's Web around the same time in my life, so I kind of
very different things.
Yeah, but I kind of get them
very
mixed up.
Different.
But just off the top, two new people guessed and got it correct, but they didn't get back to me about a message. Warren Brown and Kristen Innes. Warren Brown I know from somewhere. Kristen Innes I used to hang out in high school. Funny story about her. She was the only person in our group with a car when we were 16, 17, 18. And I rode in the trunk of that car to get us all from point A to point B more times than I'd like to admit.
Oh, you were a trunk guy, eh?
I was a trunk guy, and I remember one time specifically listening to, they were listening to The Clash, and Spanish Bombs by The Clash was on, and I have a sense memory to being in a trunk at 16.
The thing about trunk guys is they're always way too excited to get in that trunk, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't understand why this guy's so into the trunk.
But you know what? You're doing a service. Because not everybody wants to be in that trunk, Jason.
No, it's true. I'd rather be in the trunk than be middle bitch, as it was called. I was in the back in the middle. You didn't get a seatbelt.
That's crazy to me. I'd rather be safely secured with a seatbelt than bumping around in a trunk.
There was no seatbelt.
A tire iron hitting you in the face.
In the trunk, it was kind of like a free ride, like a free carnival ride.
Right.
I still can't
you
get
are
over
ever the optimist.
Yes. Speaking of optimism, I still can't get over that I pointed out that we're fluent in English.
Yes.
We're doing great. Stop pointing it out. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So Gav Kalir also got it correct. He said, "Live long and prosper. With great power comes great responsibility. So smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast." Gav Cal. So he just mixed up a whole bunch of references there. Matt Philp, a former guest of the show, friend of the show, came through again with a fake guess. Put the kids to bed for this one. He guessed Lion King 3, Scar fucks Pumbaa. So we're demonetized on YouTube now.
That man just had a child.
I know. Naveed, are you working blue tonight? Because I understand you also had a kid, so when your kid grows up to see this one day, are they gonna?
Oh yeah, I'll tell them all about Lion King 3. No problem. Yeah, no, it's a wild time when you have kids. All sorts of crazy ideas coming up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, like how am I gonna pay for this kid's college tuition? And
what's the Lion King 3 called? Oh my god!
What?
And since we didn't have a lot of people guess correctly this week, I should say, I want to just give a shout out to Josh Howard, also known as at Nifty Neat Club, the person who actually does the theme, the regular normal theme for this show. He put out a record, and this record is called Defenders of Eastwood. It's a fictional original soundtrack for a game that doesn't exist that I hope gets made one day. But I got the record, and I just wanted to show it off because it's really cool.
It's in.
Here it is.
There it is.
Yeah, the artwork is really cool on it.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of glitching in and out of reality. But
well, everybody who's listening, look it up because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I just want to show you the great variant that I got. It's like a bubblegum splatter thing.
It's like a donut. The Simpsons donut.
Simpsons donut. And it's really fucking good. It's he was my drummer in high school, and we were not as good as this album, I'll tell you that much. We were also called the Hot Villains. So a little bit more history from my high school era.
Yeah, he made both of our themes. He made our regular theme as well as our Halloween
and our Halloween theme. So go look up at Nifty Neat Club on Bandcamp. That you can find that album on there for free. I should point that out. If you want to just listen to it, it's there. And you can find him on Instagram as well, Nifty Neat Club. Now that stuff is out of the way, I just want to remind everybody, if you're watching, we got 6 people in the chat right now. If you haven't already, please look us up on all social media at Hey Did You See This One? This is a call to action. Just go out there, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, just give us a subscribe, drop kick that notification bell. Send us a DM, tell us about how you're feeling, leave a comment underneath this video. We're coming to the point now where people are leaving lots of negative comments, which I'm told in the social media world is like, you got to get the negativity so there's a tipping point and you'll sort of start.
Yeah, I've seen some mean stuff on TikTok, and it takes every ounce of my strength to not be like, no, you suck.
One of those
I'm funny. My mom thinks I'm funny.
One of those things was you saying that you stick your tongue out too much while you're thinking. So
I do.
You're also providing some hatred. It's not hatred.
Sometimes I hate on myself late at night and then forget it was me and then read it and go, what?
What the hell? Like, oh, wait, who the hell is this
me.
guy? And you click on it and it's like, wait, that's my artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, just one last thing, I want to shout out White Bat Audio, who I use their music for our pre-show, and sometimes, like last month, Steve used White Bat Audio, which you can find at White Bat Audio on YouTube. They do DMCA or DCMA free music that people can use in their podcasts, their YouTube videos, etc. Just want to give a shout out to him as much as possible going forward, because he creates lots of good music, and any little uptick for him, give him the old Weird Al, give him the old, hey, did you see this one boost? We got 6 people in the chat still, and they can go.
It's gone down to 3.
It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just us now.
Yeah. Listen, it's usually just us. So, welcome to Hey Did You See This One?
I love it.
We're pleased to
Feeling
have
so
you.
Good.
I'm trying to get through the pre-rolls fast as possible, because I feel like this is going to be a long-winded episode. There's lots to talk about. And speaking of lots to talk about, it's time for our brief history.
A brief history.
This is essentially where we talk about the first time we saw the movie, any history facts that we have about the movie, and basically, what you were feeling and where you were in life when you saw it for the first time. I'll say, Naveed, if you watched it yesterday, that's fine. But if you've seen it before, please provide some context if you can. And also, it is around here, it is a time-honored tradition to give our guests the first opportunity to give their brief history. So why don't you tell us about your brief history with the old missing link?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for setting us up here and sending us down this long rabbit hole of way back when I watched this movie about 3 hours ago.
Yep. Okay.
And
right.
you'd think I'd be kidding, but I'm not. No, I mean, it was earlier this week, and I said I should probably give this a once over again. I'd known about it originally when it came back, and it was on my list because once I had this is going back to Leica history. Coraline was the first Leica production that I watched, and I fell in love with it for all the reasons why everybody loves that movie still. And then, of course, I eventually started putting all this stuff on my watch list, and then I never got to it because life happens. So I was ever so grateful when you and Steve reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to watch a movie? Do you want an excuse to watch a movie?" And I said, "Hell yes, let's do it." So it was just this week, and I gotta say, I haven't watched a stop motion production in a decade more, maybe. But it brought up all of the same sort of feelings I used to get watching Wallace and Gromit as a kid, in the 90s, early 2000s. And there's a quality to it that is just so wondrous, that brings out that sort of that childlike desire to be embedded in the process. Because you can tell it's not, you can tell that it's fantastical. You can tell that it's not quite real life. And there's something unique about that. And I feel like Missing Link really did capture that aesthetic. And I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But what I love is when you get into those moments in the film that you can just, that this can only happen when you do something frame by frame. You can only get this quality when you are in frame by frame. And so to have that opportunity a couple of days ago and then again earlier today, just to really make sure I got all the Easter eggs. Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. We'll get into that, but you're absolutely right. We've kind of talked about this a little bit last week, but the whole, like, they could have just made this with CGI, but you'll never get the same, like, textures. You'll never get the same vibe. You'll never get that it's like I was saying, it's like playing with action figures, kind of, or watching people play with action figures. But that's body talk. That's body of the episode talk. Steve, why don't you give us your brief history?
Well, it is pretty brief because this movie didn't come out all that long ago, but it did do pretty poorly and kind of got buried. I don't really remember a lot of advertising for this movie when it was coming out, and I believe there was another Yeti movie that came out fairly close to this. And so it led to a little bit of confusion, even on my part.
The Spaghetti Yeti.
Yeah, something like that. Where I, even someone who follows Stop Frame like I do, I was kind of like, wasn't there supposed to be another Leica coming out at some point? And then it came and went, and I completely missed it. So the first time I watched it was during the pandemic. I think it was on sale to buy, so I was like, I have a feeling it'll be just fine, if not good. So I'll buy it and watch it. And I did. And I really liked it. And I was not surprised at all that it was really good. And it ended up leading me down a rabbit hole of watching all the Leicas and a whole bunch of other Selick movies. And just kind of going back to that, like you were saying, Naveed, like the fantastic nature of children film that don't really latch onto it being specifically for children, but allowing the writing to be organic and the comedy to be organic. They don't really kind of shy away from I wouldn't call it raunchy humor, but from humor that isn't necessarily PG at its core. And The Missing Link is great. And I'll talk about more of why during the body. But yeah, my brief history is very brief. I watched it once during the pandemic, and then I watched it a little bit of it after I showed you the beginning, Jason, a couple of months ago, where I was like, "We should do like it. Look at this movie."
That was like
and
a year
Jason
ago.
was like,
but...
"Yeah, okay." Was it a year ago?
It's been a while, dude.
I don't know if it was a year ago. But yeah, and then I watched it again this week, and it's great.
Fantastic. I mean, that's pretty much for me. Similar. I actually. I watched it basically between yesterday and today. I started it last night, and it didn't really get me at first. The first half hour was kind of like a world building, kind of like, it didn't capture me, but I watched this, like, the rest of it in one go on my lunch break today, and like at that whenever I stopped the movie, from then on I was like, this is amazing. I don't know why I couldn't get into it last night, but maybe it was like a vibe. It was just a vibe thing. I was just wiped out after work last night. That was my first time watching it. I remember when it came out. I did spend the whole time trying to figure out who people were. That's kind of the thing I'm doing this month, is before I go look it up, or while I'm watching, look up who everybody is. I didn't figure anybody out, and I'm just looking at the IMDb now, and I thought at first that Susan Link, Mr. Link himself, was Jason Schwartzman at first, because Zach Galifianakis is kind of he's got a little bit of his vocal tics, but he's kind of doing a different voice than I've ever heard him do.
Yeah.
And as I recall, now that I think about it, I feel like I remember when this movie was being made, I saw an interview with Zach Galifianakis talking about how, like, he's been doing these dumb comedies for so long that it might have been refreshing for him to do something a little bit different. So you kind of get that in his performance. He's not just that character from The Hangover again, or Dinner for Schmucks again, where he's just the kind of the lovable idiot. He's a lot more earnest and a lot more a lot more cute or something. Also, I'm finding out at this very moment that Sir Lionel Frost was Hugh Jackman, and I'm sorry, but that's just the way the cookie.
You're bad at the game you
Mind
created for yourself.
blown.
Yeah.
I am. I'm not as good as Steve at the just knowing who people are.
Yeah, but Jason, I mean, I'll forgive you on that one, because even I was a little bit surprised. In the same way that, Zach Galifianakis in this, he he performs a voice.
Yeah.
It felt the same with Hugh Jackman's performance as well. It wasn't just him speaking into a microphone. I think they were all trying to bring a little bit of performance, which, to their right, as actors or voice actors, is necessary to bring these characters to life as well. So I'm with you on that one. I was like, I feel like I know this voice.
Yeah, like, I feel like
But
I've seen him tearing someone apart with claws before.
yeah,
I can't quite put my claws on it.
Okay.
I think though, like I watched The Prestige a lot because I like that movie quite a bit, and his vocal sort of cadence and just the way he pronounces things as Frost is a little bit similar to his character from The Prestige.
Yeah, I wrote down. I can't remember who I thought it was, but I have it written down in my notes. So when I get to it in my notes, I'll mention who it was. I can't think of who I was thinking it was at first, because now that I know who it is, like, it's like when you like are trying to think of a song while listening to a song, your brain just won't go.
yeah.
But with that, we're gonna move on to the next segment here. We're gonna do some director talk.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of Sound. Speed. Action!
This is basically a segment where we kind of break down what the director of the film has done. We talked about Chris Butler a little bit last week because he co-wrote Paranorman. Or he wrote Paranorman. And
He co-directed. There was two directors for Paranorman.
Right. He's listed as a writer for Paranorman. So we kind of covered his stuff last week, but if we want to do a quick recap, he's mostly known for that. He was the head of story on Kubo and the Two Strings, which we're going to be covering, and he did he did a couple other shorts. So he's a storyboard artist on the Mr. Bean animated series, which I keep saying, and it makes me laugh. And he worked on Tarzan 2 and Corpse Bride and Coraline.
Yeah, he's primarily an animator and an illustrator, but he does write quite a bit as well. He's sort of like a jack of all trades for projects that make their way through or tangentially through Laika. So he's just sort of like a general creative who's very good at every aspect of the different jobs that he does. I wish that he's done more, but I guess the things that he does work on tend to take a very long time, so it's understandable why his resume is not as lush as others might be. But even look at like Henry Selick, who is probably one of the most celebrated stop frame animation directors to ever exist, and his filmography is pretty short as well. So,
Yeah, because
hopefully he keeps at it. Hopefully this art form doesn't die because it's not really kind of getting the love that it used to.
I don't think there's been there hasn't been another Leica movie since Missing Link, because it takes them like 6 years to really, from the beginning, thinking about what the story is going to be, to getting a script together, to putting all the parts together, to, like, it takes days. It takes days to do seconds of frame by frame, right? Captain Birdseye 4 in the chat says, how does Spider have such a magnificent beard, and why don't I live inside it? So first time chatter, thank you for noticing my beard. It is also stop frame. Each individual hair is stop frame animated. Much like
for every episode we thread using real horse hair into Jason's face. Thousands and thousands of little hairs.
And it's interesting too, because the hair on the top of my head is actually slowly migrating from the top to the bottom, as you can see. But that is there anything else you wanted to add, Naveed or Steve, about the director? No pressure, of course.
No, I mean, I'm excited to see the movie that's coming out for Leica potentially next year, or at least something for it. It's slated to be released in 2025, but we haven't seen really anything for it yet. I was kind of going through the Leica website the last couple of weeks in preparation for this string of episodes, and it's still pretty much a mystery at this point. So I'm kind of excited to see more.
How old is Leica at this point?
Not very old. I believe they started with Coraline, and they do other stuff, right?
Yeah. Leica was, I think they were a mid 2000s, right? They're like 15 or something years old.
Yeah, we went over it a little bit last week, but Chris Knight, I believe his name is the CEO who essentially got his father to purchase the studio. His dad owns Nike.
Right, Nike guy. Yeah.
Which is pretty cool because, he has a extremely wealthy father who, instead of just being a shitbag, decided, like, maybe I can get my dad to fund my movie studio to make these really heartfelt and important pieces of cinematic history rather than be like, I'm going to make a bunch of boner comedies and just make a lot of money. He seems to be pretty passionate about the projects that he works on.
Yeah, where's my stop motion version of Sausage Party? I was thinking about that. The reason I ask is because this company, before, I assume they were called something different, but they made the California Raisins famously. And then this Chris Knight fellow came in and kind of, I guess it was a hostile takeover from what I understand, but he basically like just bought them out, bought enough shares to own the company. And
the company was dying. Like, it wasn't a profitable company.
Were they still making stuff, or were they kind of dormant?
I mean, they were floundering, right? Like he basically gave all these artists a place to live, which is pretty good.
That's cool. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more as the month rolls on. But what do you say we talk about this frickin' movie over here?
Okay.
Okay. Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
This is, of course, the body of the episode. This is what you came to see. It is essentially the podcast portion of the show. People always give me a hard time for having this show go on for way too long. But I will say, if you just fast forward to the body and listen to just the body, well, that's about a tight hour and a half. This is, of course, the part where I'm going to run down the plot, sort of keep us on track plot-wise, and we're just going to talk about this dang thing. And I'll start us off by talking about the scene that starts the movie that Steve showed me. Let's meet halfway and call it 9 months ago. The scene has our baby. It's weird. I don't like that. But essentially... Mr. Frost, Sir Lionel Frost, and Mr. Lint, Lemuel Lint, his sidekick, are out on a boat, and they're trying to essentially summon something. Through context clues, we sort of find out that Lionel Frost is an adventurer of sorts, a cryptozoologist, if you will, who's sort of looking for cryptids. He's it seems to be set in like the late 10s, early 20s. I would say. Do you know exactly when this is set? That's the aesthetic. Maybe the late 1800s even.
Yeah, it feels sort of turn of the century-ish.
Hmm.
Not really. I don't think there's ever a point where you
Hmm.
do see the exact date.
Well, you do actually.
Oh, do you?
Oh,
When?
If I can be that well actually guy.
hey, you can because
Hmm.
we need that sometimes.
Yeah. So you only know this if you watch through all the credits, and there's a moment near the end of the credits before they all start to roll where they do a sort of a panning shot of the camera for a portion of the movie where they're on the elephant going through India.
Right, yeah.
And just prior to that, they have a blueprint that is fictional, as if, Lionel Frost is the one who's mapping this out. And it says 1898
Okay.
on it. So I can only assume that that's sort of, around the time. So Steve, you're right, turn of the century, bingo bango, nailed it.
That's why
Got it.
I course corrected because I realized 1920s those frontier towns would have already been like bigger, like they'd have brick and mortar. But the aesthetic of traveling through like Indian forest, Himalaya areas, and like the way that they portray London and stuff.
Hmm.
That's yeah, okay.
Yeah, that is very much. And I mean, you're leaning into the great explorers who were kind of doing that stuff. Who was the Mount Everest fella?
Indiana Jones.
Jonathan
Yes.
Everest.
But there was a lot of that stuff happening around that time, Jason. You're right.
I will say, like the discovery of like the pyramids and stuff is what this movie kind of reminds me
Oh
of,
yeah.
and I really like that aesthetic. The who's the like there is an adventurer from like this era who has the hat, like the Sherlock Holmes hat, but he's an adventurer. Maybe it is just Sherlock Holmes, but
Alan Quartermain?
yeah,
I don't.
actually I think so.
Right. Well, he's
Getting
fictional too.
getting stuck in yeah, well, getting stuck in quicksand is a gag I'm surprised was not in this movie. And
They probably were. They probably had someone brought that up, and they're like, "Are you insane? That's too predictable. Get it out of here.
Get it out of here.
Yetis, more Yetis.
More Yetis, hundreds of Yetis, and a
This movie's got to
Shangri-La.
open with a bang. The Loch Ness monster. Let's go."
I like the duality of like the mystical speak, how everything's like mysterious and mystical and a legend, and then they like explain a lot of stuff with science ish. That it's literally just like you're not supposed to go there because of these yetis. Like Shangri-La does exist, but it's not for man. It's for the in between people, the yetis, the literal missing links. But that's way later. Right now, he goes down and he essentially finds Loch Ness and
Nessie.
Nessie,
Mm.
and as they're having a tussle with old Nessie, Mr. Lind gets almost eaten, and we get a great action sequence of Sir Lionel like basically fighting Loch Ness.
Yeah, we kind of were shown that this guy isn't just sort of a finicky bookworm nerd. He's very
Being an
capable in
action
terms
man.
of yeah, he's capable when it comes down to almost anything that is required of him in terms of combating a giant prehistoric little fish lizard.
Yeah.
And we get more and more of that as the movie goes on. By the end of the movie, you're like, this man must be incredibly strong if
Incredibly
he's
strong.
able to hold his weight, his friend's weight, the weight of a 650-pound ape man, and also a tiny little cowboy guy.
I immediately
Yeah.
noticed in this film compared to Paranorman that I know they're like a full movie apart. It's like the technology changes, the way they film things changes, but the stop motion is like noticeably better. The textures are noticeably better, and I don't know. I got drawn in by the world a little bit more.
One of the biggest
Hmm.
difference I think between Paranorman and this that I noticed is that the costumes for the people in this are made of actual fabric, whereas Paranorman everything is also carved and modeled. So it's not real fabric. Everything is moving deliberately, which is why you get a lot more of that sort of jarring, janky animation, which is stylistically still really cool in Paranorman, and it's there on purpose and it feels good. But in this, everything, the cloth on the clothes is all real.
Like
They're
the hair in Paranorman was way better because they had more flow. This it's a little bit more cartoony, unless they're
yeah, and they kind of locked down everything a little bit so
yeah
that they didn't have to spend a million years animating every hair.
yeah like even they put all the work into Mr. Link, but even most of his shots, unless he's going like this to his fur, it's pretty much it looks like like not plastic, but it looks like clay made to
Yeah.
look yeah. But
Which I think, from an aesthetic perspective, though, they made it fit well within the context of the film, and it wasn't that we didn't believe he wasn't a hairy ape man, but I think it allowed was for it to have a feeling of that sort of, what would you expect an ape man who's been living out in the woods to be like? This guy's not washing his body with shampoo every other day, so it's
I
going to
mean,
be
according to
kind
him,
of.
he has a bath every two
I mean,
weeks
he
or
does
whatever
every week.
in the river. Yeah.
but his cave smells
Um,
like shh, which
yeah,
was a funny little gag.
but it gives the appearance of it being kind of matted and mottled, and I don't know, in a way that you'd expect that sort of hair to be, which is very different than what we end up seeing later on
Yeah.
with his fellow cousins to the
Mm.
north. So but it totally makes sense. Imagine if they had kept the same style in terms of trying to animate the hair the way they did in Paranorman. There's
It'd be too
just
much.
endless amounts of hours for Susan's hair to be managed.
With not a lot of payoff.
No.
This one looked a lot like, I know they use essentially the same style, but Paranorman, I kept finding myself forgetting it was stop motion, and my brain just clicks into it's CGI, and then you have to like remind yourself. This one, the whole time, I was like just blown away by some of the stuff, some of the detail that they were putting into things they didn't need to. That's why I love this studio so far. I'm so fucking excited for Kubo and the two strings. Like every time we're watching that video at the beginning, I look away because I don't want to know anything about it. And Coraline, less or so. I've seen bits and pieces. I've seen video essays on Coraline, so I know that movie a little bit. But I'm so excited for Kubo. The boys, he manages to rescue Mr. Lint, and they almost get a picture of Loch Ness, right before
They do,
all
but the
this,
camera gets
but
destroyed.
the camera gets destroyed, and then they get blasted. Loch Ness just blasts them out of the ocean or to the lake. They fly through a fence, and when they're back at their sort of office, Mr. Lint's like, "I'm a human being, and I keep getting in these predicaments where I almost die," and this is where we really learn that Sir Lionel, like, he really just cares about himself. And I think that the major family kids movie theme of this is like care about others, sort of be selfless. Where Paranorman was kind of overcoming fear and overcoming bullying and like learning what's right, the difference between right and wrong. This one is more about like going on a personal journey to learn that you're more than just yourself, and you have to, when you rely on others, you have to sort of reciprocate when they're giving back.
Yeah, well, it
Yeah.
also has to do with wanting to be a part of something bigger than
Yes,
yourself, right?
that's a
Like
good point,
Mr.
yeah.
Link wants to be part of his extended family. Mr. Frost or Sir Frost wants to be part of the stupid boys club that make discoveries around the
The
world or whatever.
Adventurers
Yeah.
Guild, as I kept writing
Yeah.
them as. Yeah.
And it's about that, but it's also about not being wanted in return by those things that you want to be a part of, which happens all the time in everyday life.
Yeah. Well, I think they do a fantastic job of setting up his character right at the beginning in those opening scenes, where he's sitting in this boat as they're sort of going over this lock, and Mr. Lint is the one with the paddles and he's with the oars, and he's pushing the boat along. and Lionel's sitting there with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And the first line he says in the movie is, "This tea's a little tepid."
Yeah.
You know, so to your point, Jason, he's really concerned about himself and his own lived experience in those moments. But yeah, he's a well-to-do Englishman. You know, he's as stoic as he is in needing the approbation of his fellow gentlemen. Yeah, he wants to be taken seriously by the adventuring community.
We
But
can only assume that he comes from some sort of old money, right? Like it's never
oh,
questioned by us or the people in the movie, where the fuck do you get all this money to go
To
to
just
fund these
exactly.
excursions?
Globetrot,
Yeah.
and then like you look at
Yeah.
his you look at his office. I feel like him. We'll get into the sort of love interest, not really the friend. Adelita,
Adeline,
Adeline or Adelita.
Adelina. Yeah.
Adelina. It seems like they have some sort of like past. She's extremely wealthy as well. I kind of was making some headcanon about that stuff too, right? Like, so we'll talk
Well,
about that
it's
a bit. When
pretty much implied that they were in a relationship at some point,
Yeah.
and he wasn't treating her very well, and then she married his good friend or
Hmm.
whatever,
who
right?
was also an
Yeah.
adventurer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a prediction at up to this point. They painted Sir Lionel as such a ridiculous idiot that I thought this movie was going to be about him going to find Susan Link, Mr. Link, and Mr. Link already being in clothes and acting like a person, but doesn't tell Sir Lionel that he is the person that he's looking for. And I thought it was going to be this like, I thought it was going to be a lot goofier. Like I thought it was going to be like a dumb kind of like not as heady as Paranorman comedy. I was wrong, completely wrong on all fronts. It's the most heartwarming shit that, you know, and it's extremely funny, you know, and it's extremely well made. And I'm glad
Yeah.
that wasn't the storyline. And the reason
For sure.
I bring that up is because at this point he starts talking to Mr. Lint about I'm gonna find another thing. I got this note, I got this letter from somebody in the United States who claims that they can lead me to I forget if it says Sasquatch in this, but
He says Sasquatch.
he does say Sasquatch, and he has the foot cast of the Sasquatch. And Mr. Lint's like, well, have fun on your own. I can't do this anymore because
Later.
And then
Yeah.
last week I sort of introduced a new idea, and I wrote another one down much later in the movie, but it's like he leaves, Mr. Lint leaves, and then he just goes, or sorry, no, that's not what I wanted. Mr. Lint agrees to go. The cycle isn't broken, so credits. The credits just roll right there. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's a key moment, right? In this, when you think about his character, because one of his catchphrases is always about how he's a man of his word. And he says that multiple times in the movie. And he this is what he says to Mr. Lint too, when he's like, I almost got eaten by, Nessie.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, don't worry, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. And he's like, well, that's what you said to me last time.
Yeah. Every
Right?
time.
So it really sets him up to be down this path of him believing that he's a man of his word. But then in this immediate opening, we see that actually that's not really the case. So what he believes is not really actually what he's performing. But that just is how we start to see that character progression happen as he goes on an adventure down the road, which I think is beautiful. And so for you to make that observation of, you know what, if Mr. Lint had stuck around, then yeah, we don't need to watch the rest of the movie because it's just going to end right there.
That said, like if he did go fine, I think that the movie would continue even with Mr. Lint there, but there might have been some like conflict between Mr. Link and Mr. Lint. But Mr. Lint leaving is pretty crucial to the naming convention of Sasquatch, right? So the biggest thing about this that I kept thinking is they could, if this was a CGI thing, they could just churn out prequels and sequels, and it would just be Sir Lionel going on these like increasingly dumber, more cash grabby, shitty straight to DVD style
Yeah.
kids movies, right? But because there's so much love and care, and Leica doesn't really do sequels, or they don't do sequels so far, you know, maybe in when I'm on my deathbed, a couple of movies will have sequels, you know, like that's how long these fucking things take to make, right? But as it stands, there's like 6 movies, maybe 5.
Yeah, unfortunately, like their movies are profitable. Actually, this one was not, but up until this point, they have all been profitable, but not profitable enough for them to even consider making a sequel. You know, and it's also like they wrap the stories up
Like
pretty
good,
tightly
yeah.
at the end. We've only done Paranorman so far, but that movie doesn't really. There's no real sequel
Yeah,
to
there's
be
like a
had there.
world-ending situation, and they can make a sequel out of everything as we know.
They could, but there's no point, right?
Yeah.
I could see the people behind it being like, well, why would we make a sequel to this? We told the story. Let's tell a new story. Let's tell a different story with different characters and have fun with it, and take the visual style that we're so comfortable with and so good at, and show something new with it, right? Like the color palettes of Paranorman compared to this are completely different,
Yeah.
and they're both equally as beautiful in different ways, right?
I think Paranorman would have lent itself well to a Saturday morning cartoon that was CG. You know, I think don't do that because it's messing with the art form. But I think that
Skin
one
crawled when you said that. It was like,
I know. Sorry, I just I'm just kind of
started picturing the theme song in my head. It's like what's that instrument called where you
The
wave your
theremin?
hands? The theremin.
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Like, let's just go talk to Leica and talk to Fox Kids and pitch this thing, Comedy Network. Pitch this thing, Paranorman TV show. This one, I think, only works if it's done in this style. But a sequel to this movie, I feel like, would be very cool to have them open up the same way, doing some shit. But since they're pals, right, it works out. And we either are introduced to a second cryptid that's their friend, and they go on an adventure together involving some new villain, or they have a falling out. The old sequel, superhero loses their powers.
Jason writing movies from the 90s over here.
Look, I'm writing superhero movies from the.
This is how it should be. The Shangri-La is discovered by humans and it's being destroyed.
That's
and
great.
The Yetis are now coming to ask for help. We need your help. All the Yetis have been kidnapped by that man. He somehow survived falling down in the pit. And he's making coats out of Yetis.
He's got more cuts on his head. I can't wait to talk about that weirdness. But essentially what happens here is he's going to go find Sasquatch. He's got the note, claims to know where Sasquatch is, and says the game is afoot while holding a foot, which was fun. And this is where Lionel goes to talk to the members only guild, the Hunters Guild or the Adventurers Guild.
Yes, the Optimates Club, the Fellowship of Adventurers, Explorers, and Great Men.
Great men, yeah.
The plaque says it.
And
a bunch of gross old white men who are all just listening to one asshole tell probably the same story he's told like a million times, and they're all feigning like reverence for him. And it's
you
just
know
like,
that's true because because they're listening to Lionel talk about Bigfoot and they're in until it's Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Slams his hand down. He's like, "Shut up! Listen to me. This guy sucks." And I think it's just a jealousy thing. Feels like this new young up and comer who hasn't really made a name for himself is trying to come in here and join our guild.
Starts telling his story, and he literally smashes a guy down to use him as a step stool to get onto a table to then
Stand
place his
taller.
foot on a globe, onto the globe itself.
A lot of very on the nose symbolism.
Yeah.
And I mean, they shout it out when he says, "I'm going to be out there searching for Sasquatch."
He shows him the foot, and the guy is like, "That's a very big foot."
But Pigott is one who says it. He's like, "We're descended from great men, not great apes." And then Lionel fights back and says, "Well, I think the two go hand in hand." And this is quite early, right? This is like right at the start of the movie. We're like 10 minutes into it.
Hey, check this out. Check this out.
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
At 10 minutes and
Yeah.
52 seconds, he says missing link. They say it again. He says
Yeah.
link right before this, and he says missing link again much later. But we do that is the segment of the show
That's
where we
it.
point that out. Thank you. You also covered what I was going to say about the descending from man versus descending.
Yeah.
Like Lionel is a bit of a futurist in this turn of the century era when people were, they were probably still legit flat earthers. Like, you know what I mean?
I feel like there were less flat earthers then than there are now.
Maybe that's actually a good point. It's not the 400s, I suppose, or the 800s.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of good setup in this scene. I think this is what I really enjoy as this movie continues to progress. And Jason, I what you were sharing earlier about how you were watching the movie in the first half, you're like, I don't know, I don't know if I can get into it. Something's not sitting right. But then you came back and you watched, maybe your headspace changed or you had a chance to let it sink in. I really feel like this is the reason why maybe Missing Link did not do so well, is because, in my opinion, it's a movie that deserves a second or third watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's where the nuances of the writing really come out. Because you go in expecting something, and it's not quite that. I think we all have a preconceived notion of what we want in a stop frame movie, especially if we've seen some of Laika's earlier work. But you didn't really get that. There is a subtlety and a humanity to it, which I think is what warrants watching it again. And I think that's why, here when they're talking about some of those symbolic moments of setting up what this journey is going to be for Sir Lionel Frost and then eventually for Mr. Link, you really do get that that they're these two individuals who are worlds apart, but but they're on the same journey, right? And you got Lord Pigott Dunsby, who's representing all that is problematic with the world, and just being able to let some of those soft human qualities kind of hit with you as you're watching the movie, maybe the second or third time, it really brings out the magic.
Yeah. I think you're fully right there, and I think the animation style sort of bleeds into that a little bit, where it looks so good. And I talked about this for Paranorman a little bit last week. My wife walked in while I was watching Paranorman, and she was like, "What's this?" And I was like, "It's Paranorman." She's like, "Why? What's this? Why are you watching some animated movie?" And I was like, "That's stop frame animation." She was like, "What?" And it took her a second. And I think that art form is sort of so lost on people that they see this and are just like, that's CGI. So it kind of comes down to these Laika films being like your favorite artist's favorite artist, your favorite comedian's favorite comedian. And that comedian is like Bill Hicks, who's just like yelling about like kids today, but it made sense at the time. Like this sort of animation isn't really, it's not all about the story. It's about what they're doing with the medium. And that's a lot to have somebody be, when did this movie come out? Was this
2019?
But when during the year?
Oh, good question.
I think it was April.
Like April? Okay. So, people are like, all the superhero movies are coming out around this time. People want to go see the blockbusters in a couple months, and trying to get people to go out and see this like artistic masterpiece, it's going to be rough to get the average person to go sit through it anyway. And then
and it's sad because there's these moments like right after this part in the movie, after we realize that Stephen Fry's character is going to be keeping an eye on Frost, we get this little montage of him traveling through the United States to Washington State, and then we get this nice slow, calm and beautiful shot of him just walking through the forest. I used it in the video at the beginning, and it's probably about 30 to 45 seconds long, and it's just like they're just taking their time to be like, look at this shit that we built. This is amazing. Look how good this looks.
Before that shows that kind of thing off. When he first gets onto the ship and the ship's cruising, there's a shot of the deck, and it's showing the motion of the boat like going back and forth by just showing deck chairs sliding.
Right. Yeah.
And that I was mesmerized by. And
but I mean, this is all part of the same sort of long montage, right? It's this long part of him just traveling. And it's very much like an old Indiana Jones movie or something, right? Where they just show the map markers and things like that. But it's it's I don't know, the editing is perfect, the music is amazing, and just the style, the visual style, the art direction in this movie is amazing. It's so beautiful, and especially the stuff in the forest. But like you said, the stuff on the boat too, where all the birds are, it's like this profile shot of him, and it's like a hero shot of these birds. Looks better than anything in any superhero movie that came out that year, I guarantee it.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2019 was like, well, I think Endgame came out, didn't it? Or was that 2020?
even still.
Even still.
I will still put this movie visually up against Endgame, and I'll probably say that this game or this movie looks better than
I
Endgame.
think it was Infinity
Mhm.
War actually, because I think Endgame came. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A lot more love was put into this, and a lot
Yeah.
more artists got to do real art, not just some CGI person, CGI team of hundreds, I should say, under the gun of Disney. Be like, make this shit now, or
Yeah.
you're fired, or
But
we'll go
even
with a
like
different production company altogether.
Yeah, you can look at the art direction here, and you can see where it was pulled directly from conceptual design, right? Like a lot of the time you'll see concept art and it looks completely different than what ends up on the screen, and that's just based on how things have to be technically in real life, right? Like this needs to make sense visually. Whereas this movie you can get away with a lot that just doesn't look quite natural, but that's part of the beauty for it, right? You can see even in the picture that you have up, Naveed, is the picture for those listening, it's a picture of the forest that they used for some of the promotional material, and it you can tell where the artist used a flat brush to draw on the side of these trees to make bark, and how they carved that and made it look like the concept art rather than taking the idea of the concept and changing it to reflect what would look like in reality. They're using the concept art directly as not just inspiration, but as a template to work from. And it's so cool. It's so cool.
Mhm.
Speaking
Yeah,
of,
that aesthetic quality is really what helps ground the narrative that they're building in the movie, and I think those have to go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, especially in this film, which it's those subtleties, Steve, that you're sort of talking about, where the concept art is established and honored in the
Mhm.
actual execution of the medium, and then in those long shots, the direction is honoring the work as well, that has gone
Yeah,
into doing the producing all the physical components for it. And
I think
so
this is
let's just let it hang out on, let's just live in that for a
well, I think
little
also
bit.
the director, right, Chris Butler,
Hmm.
we've talked about it briefly, but he does concept art, he does storyboarding. So it's,
Hmm.
he's looking at these things and saying, oh, I want this to be translated exactly how it is, and not necessarily like, now I'll
Yeah.
take this concept and make it my vision. It's like, no, your vision as the artist is going to be reflected on screen, which is like, as a person who draws for a living sometimes, it's really cool when somebody takes something that you've done and uses it from its bare bone aspects rather than trying to change and manipulate the thing that you're providing for them. They appreciate it and they think, oh, that looks cool how it is. Let's use it exactly how it is. It's cool.
this
It's
is
very cool.
this,
And
I
it's part of the
wanted
reason that I think this studio is so successful in making these pieces of art, because they actually take everything from those conceptual stages and they see it through to the end. They realize that they have something really good, and rather than have to change it along the way, they'll take it from beginning to end with a pretty straight trajectory, which is really cool.
there's a game I want to bring up, Mother 2 or Earthbound for the Super Nintendo. Here's the Bigfoot from that, okay? Now, Mother 2 was a labor of love game that was made by Shigesato Itoi. Basically, he's a famous author in Japan, right? Nintendo comes to him. He's friends with Miyamoto, and it's kind of like, do you want to make a game? You're this famous author, and he's like, yes, if I get to control all aspects of it, essentially. And that's Mother 1 for the Nintendo. That didn't come here till much later, but Mother 2, Earthbound, comes here. And if you look at the player's guide, the way that they made the art for this is concept art from the game. They made these little clay figurines, and when you're reading through the player's guide, you can see the clay figurines for all the monsters in the game. And this, I couldn't stop thinking about this friggin' Bigfoot while watching this movie. And Mother 2 is one of my, or Earthbound, or whatever you want to call it, it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's a Super Nintendo RPG classic. And if you compare that to like here Steve's got the finished Mr. Link and probably the concept Mr. Link. These two are very similar. I wouldn't be surprised if there was influence for the Laika team from Nintendo, because of the same way that they put video games together sometimes at Nintendo, especially the labor of love games like this. I'm not saying that there's definitely a correlation. I'm just saying that I saw big, similarities in the way that, Laika puts together concept art. They'll make like a pre-finished clay idea, storyboard it out with that idea, and then you end up getting to, like, I like the unfinished one on the right a little bit better, but I get why the one on the left in Steve's background. If you're listening to this, go watch us on YouTube.
Well, the unfinished one actually looks more similar to the Yetis that you see at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So they probably took some of that and translated it when they were making a whole bunch of different versions, right? I think they wanted the main character one to be softer and rounder, more huggable, just to connect with kids probably, and then the ones that are more edged and spiky and sharp are the ones we get at the end, and those are the bad guys, right? So not that they're bad guys, they're just kind of like they're kind of jerks. They're not nice. They're not nice guys. Yeah.
They say one of the best lines in the movie, but I'll save when we get to that. At this point, Lionel makes it to the pioneer town. Excuse me. We get a funny gag where he walks by like a brothel, which is that, adult humor that works in a kid's movie, or you know what I mean? And also the same thing goes for the prisoner. They both make smoochy face at him.
I giggled pretty heavily at that
laughed
point.
out loud.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny that he's like also trying to escape with a file.
Yeah.
It was good.
What was going on in that town? Everybody was filing something for a minute. It felt like.
Was she filing her fingernails at the same
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. Everybody was.
It's
filing
just
something.
hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's such a simple gag, but all of the visual gags in this movie are very simple, but they're also very funny. It's just goofiness. Like when he's knocking on the door to the club, and then the guy opens the door, but he keeps knocking, and he's just knocking directly on his forehead with a cane.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
Or anytime Mr. Link is trying to do something normal, he'll just like smash a window out, or like he's hitting his head on the lamps because he's tall. I had a question for you guys about how Laika does water. Do they just use water?
Sometimes, but I think this movie was CG. It looked pretty CGI, especially the Loch Ness stuff at the beginning, which understandable. But I know that they have done stop frame water before. I believe it's just extremely excruciating and time consuming. So they're like, maybe we just do CGI for the majority of the water shots.
What is it like clear sculpted like plastic that they have to like make every frame of it? Like,
yeah, I'll try and find some examples that I can show you, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. But I mean, in Paranorman, right, there's so many things they could have got away with just using CGI but didn't. So I think that where they will use stop frame if it makes sense, but they'll also like not be purists about it and be like, let's take a step back here. We don't want this to look like Mark Twain's Electrified Blimp Goes to Hell, or whatever the hell that movie was called.
That's what it was called. I kind of imagine like when you go somewhere that has like a diorama or like a sort of a mini set, and you see the little like the real water running through like a blue basin to make it look like it's deeper. Like that.
They just wouldn't be able to use real water for stop frame because it would be too difficult to control, right? Like it's gonna always be moving and just wouldn't work. But they'll use like clear resin and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
Like in the Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff, you can see examples of it in the fountains and things where it's clearly stop frame, but you can tell it's got that sort of like hard glisten to it.
That's
like,
why I asked,
that's some kind of goo, some kind of clear goo.
That's why I asked on this one, because back when he was going through the forest, he like walks through water on the horse, and it just looked so real, and the ocean looked so real, right? So I just wanted to ask if you had some insight, and thank you for providing that, because
You're welcome.
CGI water, like that technology is like finished, you know?
Yeah, they can't make it look any better.
It just can't look
They've
more
reached the
like
ceiling.
water.
Yeah. Yeah.
But stop motion water has always blown my mind because it's probably not just like one camera trick or one technique. It's probably like a series of 50 years of techniques to get it to look right.
Yeah.
Or they just have one that looks great in stock form that they
Just use it over and over. Stock
The
frame
same
animation.
shot. Every stop frame movie has just that same shot with the water going. Whoop.
There's
Yeah, it's like the Wilhelm scream.
or the
Yeah.
CGI going through a tunnel that was used in every single thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
So he finds a big footprint, and then he goes up to, he kind of finds a dilapidated shack. He goes to the town, and we don't get much of the town yet. And the horse starts to get startled after he ties it up, and we immediately just get shots of Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, Sam Squanch, if you will, like running through the forest, and he chases after him. I thought he was gonna wipe out and lose him, because this is like Paranorman, where like they keep subverting your expectations over and over because they can literally just do whatever they want. They're not tied to that like studio being like, this has to be a movie like every other movie. It's like every little thing they do is so deliberate and so good that
That's why it's so good that these guys are separate from everything else, right? It's the blessing of having the Nike fortune on their side was like
a literal
it
100
just
billionaires just like,
yeah,
make whatever you
it
want.
gave them freedom to tell stories without having to rely on a formula that works, right? Like that's why we're getting to a point now where I don't give a shit about Marvel movies because they're all the goddamn same now. Like it's the same formula every time, and I can predict it. I've done it before. I can even predict the trailers now. Remember,
Yeah.
Jason was like, "Did you see the Quantumanium trailer?" And I was like, "Let me guess. It's probably a song from the '80s, and there's gonna be an epic version of it, and a bunch of shit happens, right?"
Yeah, my problem with the Marvel movies now is I don't watch trailers, but I am on Facebook because I gotta promote this thing somewhere. And now Facebook has this dumb thing where they just promote groups to you even if you're not signed up to them.
Part of them, yeah.
And I've just been seeing spoilers for the new Deadpool. Like I've seen so many things that I just should not have seen that I'm probably just going to watch the trailer when it comes out because you know what? We just don't get nice things anymore. And unless it's a Leica movie that 19 people see. Do you have the box office stats on this? We forgot to do it in the
yeah, it only made $26.6 million with a budget of $100 million. So it did not do well.
And it's not just that it cost that much. It took like 5 years to make. You know what I mean?
It's unfortunate, but I said this at the beginning. I don't remember there being a lot of advertisement for this movie, at least not to me. But I remember Paranorman very clearly having quite a bit of advertising. And you look at the disparity between the money there. It's like, yeah, maybe they should have had a couple more bus stops with the missing link face on them or something. You know? Yeah. But also, I do remember that the posters that I have seen before, they were kind of like the one that you have up, right? Where I'm like, that doesn't look interesting to me. It doesn't look like something I'd want to see. But the image behind Naveed, that is much more interesting, and I would have been far more intrigued by it.
Like if
or
that was
show the Loch Ness
poster,
Monster. Do something, man.
Like if the thing behind Naveed was just a poster that said missing link on it, I'd be like, what the hell is that? I feel like,
or even if they did like the classic, you know, the Bigfoot picture where he's walking and he's blurry. Give me one of those. I'll go see Missing Link. Yeah.
Which during this sequence, I think they tried to lampoon that a little bit because he does sort of make that
the weird behind the shoulder look. Yeah.
I almost feel like this would have been a trailer that was before a Marvel movie during 2019. But I can't really think of what, like, was there more kids? Was there an Ant-Man? Was Ant-Man 2 out in 2019?
I don't even know.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's all a blur. That's the problem with putting out a Marvel movie every 2 months.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Well, now they're Kevin Feige is like, nah, we're gonna chill out a little bit because nothing's making any money.
Yeah, now. Endgame came out in April.
Yeah, there you go.
Shazam, Dumbo, Captain Marvel.
Shazam was pretty good. Captain Marvel was fine.
all of
Dumbo.
these movies.
The Dumbo remake came out around this time.
Yeah, this is the box office for 2019 April. Pet Cemetery. Oh, Us came out. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That shitty Hellboy movie, and The Missing Link came in at number 11.
On like the opening weekend or for the year.
That was just the whole month.
Okay.
Just the gross for the month. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I saw a trailer and was like, that looks interesting, but maybe I assumed it was CGI also. You know, like you don't really, they don't tell you much. Like for instance, just before we move to the next point, Willy Wonka and the Mean Girls movie that just came out are both musicals, and neither the trailers for either show that they're musicals. So they just shit out something that they think people.
I mean, in defense of Wonka, why would you not think it was a musical?
Because the trailer doesn't show it, and I'm a stupid
I know, but like the
average
first movie
normie.
is the first and second movie are both musicals.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I would have been surprised if there weren't any songs in Wonka. To be clear,
I think they show Hugh. What's his face? What's his name?
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant. Sing a little. They do the '80s thing with the slow Oompa Loompa song. They don't actually, but it'd be funny if they did, where it's like acoustic and it's like the something in the way from Batman, but
Yeah,
but it's Oompa.
Ew. I don't like this.
Call me. I'll
Oh,
make you.
wow.
I'll help you edit your trailers so they're not so spoilerific. Don't do that. Yeah. So essentially, they finally have a bit of a meet cute, if you will, and Lionel's like, "Can you talk?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can talk. How you doing?" And he's like, "What the hell?"
What the heck?
And we basically find out that he doesn't. He's kind of like, "I called you here." Basically, and Lionel doesn't really listen to him. He's like, "Because you want to be discovered." And he's like, "No, I don't really want to be discovered so much as I need your help. And,
I want you to take me to Shangri-La.
Yeah.
And not only that, but he gives Lionel exactly what he's looking for. He says, I've been following you, and you're amazing. You are an adventurer. You are an explorer. You are the one person who's going to help, I know can help me get this impossible thing." And that's exactly what Lionel wants. He wants to be recognized for that. But in this instance, like you said, he doesn't even hear it from him. And that kind of ends up becoming a bit of a theme along the way, right? But I do appreciate that, Jason, you said it's kind of their meet cute, because you can kind of like, you're trying to sum up a little bit. What is this relationship going to be from the beginning? And it is kind of like a, I don't know, like a bromance sort of, kind of they're going to come together at some point, and you're just trying to figure out how they actually do it.
The movie
So,
I kept thinking about was that one with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis, where they or Jason Bateman, where they go on like, I think there's also one with Robert Downey Jr. where they go on a road trip to like go somewhere, and it's sort of like the same dynamic. It's the idiot and straight man thing that's like pretty prevalent. We don't see them so much now. Most Zach Galifianakis movies are that, so I see why they sort of cast
why they picked him for the Sasquatch. Yeah.
But he came in. He didn't come into it as Zach Galifianakis. He's an excellent comedic actor, but he played it very sweet. He didn't be like, he didn't do this voice, and I'm Zach Galifianakis. Like, he didn't do that thing that he does when he's just phoning it in.
Yeah.
I feel like
he did. Yeah. You're right. He really did, and I think his focus. What I got from it was that the way that he was playing Mr. Link was focused on really capturing the innocence that Mr. Link embodies as his character in the film, who has been living in a forest by himself, very much uninfluenced and untouched by humanity and the challenges that they have sort of imposed and the claims that they've imposed on the world, and living in that, like, that open wonder of like, whoa, like anything is possible, and all I want is to just be like happy and accepted. And I think that is something that we end up in this moment realizing now as you're saying this, the straight man versus the lovable idiot. The expectation here should be that, hey, Mr. Link is a lovable idiot and Lionel is the straight man. But really, it's kind of the other way around.
And Lionel is kind of that character up until he meets Link. Mr.
Yeah.
Lint is like, are you kidding? He's like, we must go on our next adventure immediately. And he's like, nah, I'm going to go not die now. Bye.
That's
And
right.
we'll literally never see him again. What's Mr. Lint up to?
Spin-off.
The Lint Files.
Let's get
It's like a film noir.
Yeah. This time they're hunting skinwalkers.
Jesus. That got real dark.
It did.
I mean, listen, man, these movies are all essentially just horror movies for children.
It's true. It's
That's
true.
why I love them so much.
It's like this is like I thought it was going to be like a Harry and the Hendersons thing too at one point before I even started watching it, but I think that's a Hey, did you see this one movie? Maybe we'll do it during Cryptids month when we eventually do something like that, but this is not that. This is a kind of a buddy cop thing. But
yeah,
he takes him into his cave. He shows him he teaches him how he knows about him. The news articles paint Mr. Lind as a complete insane person, and
kind of a pervert.
And basically, Lionel's like, why do you want to leave this like utopia that you have? Utopia, and he's like, the world is getting smaller. People are moving in here. They're cutting the trees. They're building their little towns. It's not like it was. It's unclear how old Mr. Link is, but the lore around Sasquatch is the Sasquatch that people were seeing in like the 60s and 70s are the same Sasquatch that people are seeing now.
There's so many crazy things.
Like they come through a portal
Sasquatch.
from another dimension.
Yeah,
also.
like they're like interdimensional travelers or something. And it's like, what? Wait, what? They're aliens. They're time traveling ape people. There's so much weird stuff surrounding Sasquatch. I thought he was just an ape in the woods.
Then there's the grounded ones that they are literally like the Cro-Magnon man, a strain of Cro-Magnon man kept living and living and living until the numbers just dwindled. But it's like, how come there aren't stories from like 400 years ago about like these giant packs of them? You know what I mean? Like there's always just one or two. If you watch that stupid Finding Bigfoot show that went on for like 20 seasons, all they would find is like scratches on trees and like tufts of fur that could literally be from any creature, like probably bears.
Yeah. Bear crap. They're like, this isn't bear crap. No way.
Bear crap. The acidity indicates that they've been eating squirrels and bears.
Taste this. Tell me that that's bear crap.
Joe Rogan's like, there's DMT in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Sometimes that's a reference, but that's a good reference though to later in the movie when Susan's actually literally eating crap cookies.
True, and he loves it. And also, there was a gross thing that Lionel does when he first finds that Bigfoot track. He touches it and smells it and then tastes it, which I always thought, how do you trackers don't? I think it's a joke.
It's just visually a funny thing to do. Ace Ventura does it all the time.
It's true. He tastes
our finest comedian.
There's only one Ace Ventura movie. It's the second one. The world is getting smaller, and he wants to be taken out of this. He feels like he's the last of his kind, and he wants to. He talks about how there could be this Yeti, and they hatch a plan to sneak him back with his old partner's name. Changes the K to the T to a K, so he's now Mr. Link. They're gonna go find the Yeti. This is when we get one of the best like sequences where they go into a saloon and he finds another adventurer, and it turns out that we do get a cutaway for a second to like go find the adventurer and see what he's up to, talking about Lionel. And when we're into the saloon, people are like kind of arguing, and then the Sasquatch reveals who he is, and then everybody just starts fist fighting to the point that one guy just starts punching a stuffed deer head, which I thought was just so dumb, but like funny.
It was funny.
Like,
Yeah,
like
it's funny. It's because he paused. The comedic timing on it and the editing is
he just
very
turns
funny.
and goes,
But he has like
"Da-da-da-da-da."
like a slow turn to like a moose head on the wall, and he just like and the noise that it makes is so underwhelming, and like it just sounds like he's punching a pillow. Whereas everybody else is cracking each other in the head with bottles and like that real sort of Indiana Jones Hollywood sound effects punches, like yeah. Um,
Yeah, and
and then
this scene is this is where I feel that you may have gotten lost, and I feel like I did a little bit watching it. There's a certain quality and a cadence to the animation style
Yeah.
in stop frame, but we're in this movie now for about
We're at
I
the
don't know,
30-minute point.
30-minute mark, right? So it's
Yeah.
enough time has passed for you to adjust to it and be like, okay, maybe I'm not noticing that the sort of the jitter or the frames until this fight scene starts, and it is so unequivocally a stopped frame fight sequence,
yeah.
and you can't help but love it. Like just the how the everything feels like it's a little bit slow motion, even though it's supposed to be, normal speed as far as you're concerned. It
Well,
really just
there's
gives you a chance to enjoy all of those small moments of action. And then you're brought back into like, wait a second, this is stop frame. Like all of this is happening frame by frame, and
yeah.
and then you
It
just
probably
really
took
live
them
it.
5 weeks to shoot this
Yeah,
one bar fight.
yeah.
Uh, there's one thing they did in Paranorman that I noticed they didn't do in this movie, which was to smooth a lot of the animation
Hmm.
of that sort of like overly dramatic, characterized talking, like where their head and arms are moving around a lot. In Paranorman, I noticed they did some smoothing
Yeah.
to it, I think, to remove some of that jitter. But they didn't do it in this movie, which I appreciate because one thing that it did, for me at least, is it inadvertently had a negative effect on my viewing of Paranorman because it's almost like they were embarrassed by the
Hmm.
fact that it was stop frame, so they wanted to smooth it to make it look more like 3D animation,
Mm-hmm.
which
Right.
which is negative in my opinion because I'm like you gotta embrace that, man. And this
Yeah.
fight scene perfectly encapsulates like the embracing of the weirdness of and like the jitteriness as he called it of stop frame, the clothes and stuff moving around slightly strangely, and yeah,
Hmm.
it's good.
It's like the hair.
Yeah.
There's parts of the hair in Paranorman that aren't smoothed, like I was saying, that you can see that jitter. The reason why I know this is at the half-hour point is because the when the fight started happening, I was watching it like last night. It's like that's cool, and he goes outside and he has the last thing I saw before I went to bed was him get the other thug, the bigger thug, get kicked
Hmm.
by the horse through the wall. And I
Yeah.
laughed out loud, and I was now excited to see what happens next. And the
Hmm.
next today, when I was like getting ready to like sit down and like focus on the movie, I was kind of like, ugh, I don't know if I really have the focus for this. I don't know if I really like care at this point. But almost immediately, I was in, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
I accidentally saw it was Zach Galifianakis, and then I had my brain like retcon loved the movie. It all
So you're a
made
sucker.
it all
Interesting.
made sense. It all made sense.
Very interesting.
I googled it
Weird.
to get an image to work on
Hmm.
our poster for this week, and that if you look at the poster on Instagram, there's also an image in the TV of the bad guy. And I was just looking, and when you Google a movie, it just shows a Wikipedia page right away, right? I try to avoid that because I don't like it to influence my rating. I didn't see the rating; I forget what the rating is, but
But isn't that weird to you that the fact that Zach Galifianakis was in it made you like it more somehow?
it's not that it made me like it more; it's that it all made sense. I had this
Oh.
I was overcome by the character made sense to me now, and I wanted to see how well he would do with it because I know that Zach Galifianakis as an actor is he's very like jaded by it all at this point. He gets typecast as the same thing, and I know for a fact he doesn't like it. He wants to do roles that are more like the Between Two Ferns anti-comedy stuff that sort of came and went and is just sort of anti-comedy stuff is just sort of in the DNA of comedy now. There's no like, it's not like focused on it as like it was for about 10 years. And I know that he wants to be like, I know that he wants to do that sort of stuff, but people want him to be the like lovable fat guy. You know, Jonah Hill went through that too. They want him to be the lovable fat guy, but now he's an Academy Award winner because he got through that, right? But this is where it all made sense for me. And then immediately we get the train bit. So I turned the movie back on. He kicked through the wall, goes to like the next day, and they're getting on the train to go, and he's bouncing his head off the lights as he's walking behind Lionel, and then he punches a hole in the window because he's like, it's so hot in here, I don't like wearing human clothes, and he's like, well, fine, crack a window then. He punches the window out, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm sold.
I like that.
Which sets up a series of gags about how he takes everything literally. Yeah.
I am a sucker. Let's be real.
Yeah. Crack a window open with your fist. I do like that he's like, you can't just walk around nude. It's not decent. So yeah, their goal now is to get to Zoe Saldana's character. Adelina is her name, I believe.
Adelina.
I thought it was
Fortnite.
I couldn't figure out who she was. My brain defaulted to Penelope Cruz for some reason.
For some reason.
Yeah,
again, we'll call it racism.
It's not. I'm not.
I'm just joking.
Listen, her voice.
She's doing a voice. Yeah,
she is doing like a Spanish voice, but like it's a good impression of Penelope Cruz, if anything.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah, very much a stereotypical sort of feisty Latina, but a woman of her
Penelope
own right.
Cruz is like she has that like very English sounding most of it, and then it's not like Sofia Vergara where she's just got the accent the whole time.
Yeah,
Penelope Cruz has that thing where she will say it very like very American English, and then you'll get the like the Spanish accent on some things. Zoe Saldana doesn't have an accent. IRL,
yeah, I think that
right?
she was kind of much harder for me to track than a lot of the other voices for sure. Specifically because she's doing a voice. Yeah,
I was trying to think of names too that like would be big, and that was what made sense to me. So that's why.
Yeah. So the reason that they're going to her is because her husband has a map to Shangri-La, which they need, and so we have a little scene, a comical scene of him asking her for the map while he's also searching for the map at the same time. It's quite funny.
That little sequence is great because she keeps turning her back, and he'll like okay, so we forgot to point out, it's kind of important. Lionel has a cane that he doesn't need, but he uses it as like an arm extender to do things.
Yeah, he uses it a lot, considering the fact that he doesn't need it.
So during this sequence that he's like poking around while she turns her back, and he looks over and he sees a safe and he goes, there, and she's like, there what? And he's like, there, I feel so bad, you should you should feel okay because your husband died doing what he loved, and
she's like, he froze to death or something.
Yeah.
This is where we start to see some of his self-interest coming out, where I think it's set up earlier on that they had a thing at one point, and now he's using that history to try to get an advantage on her.
Leverage,
yeah. And I mean, I think she even says to him at one point, she's like, you think I'll just do whatever you want? And he's like, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And this is like seconds after we learned that his friend, who she was married to, died, and he just didn't even come to the funeral. Yeah. And she's like, why didn't you come? And he's like, I didn't have time, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think he says like, goodbyes are so tricky.
Yep.
Really, it's like, no, he just didn't need to go for anything, so he wasn't going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally she's like, get out of here. And he's like, okay. And then, of course, it just cuts to the night, and him and Mr. Link are, like, sneaking up to the fence. And we get some of the best, like, angry straight man sort of back and forth ever.
Yeah.
He's like, here, take this rope and throw it over the fence. And, of course, Mr. Link just whips the whole thing over the fence. And he's like, why do you do that for? What's next? Are you going to throw my whole bag over the fence? He's like, okay, and throws that as well. And then I think
then he immediately realizes, like, oh, you didn't actually want me to do. Whoops.
How do they? Does he just blast through the fence, or do they like?
He's about to try and climb it, but he gets a running start and he trips and just goes right
smashes
through it.
Peter Griffin's through the wall,
basically.
And the
Kool-Aid Man's it.
Cool.
And the laughs don't stop because they make it back up into that office where they find the safe, and they're just being loud. Mr. Link's talking at normal volume, you know, and Lionel's trying to explain to him, like, we have to be quiet. You know, I'm going to go keep lookout, and you take this safe over to that window and throw it out the window. And they do this great subversion here. I thought the intention for this scene was that we were going to hear a giant smash. But instead, because I thought he was going to be like, oh, I'll pick this up and throw it out the window. But what ends up happening is you just hear the worst scraping sound. And he's just pulling the safe across the ground to, I guess, push out the window. And that, of course, keeps cutting to Adelito, like, sleeping. She finally wakes up when she hears this scraping sound, and she rushes them and has a musket and blasts them. They move out of the way. It blasts the safe out of the window. They hop down, and the map is right there. He grabs the map, and they get out of there.
Yeah, I think this is a great scene too, because they're starting to bring in some of the headier I sort of commentary from a feminist lens that is really more apparent as Adelina's character becomes more of a fixture in the second half of the film, and then some of the other things that they encounter, which we'll probably talk about. But the stained glass window that's so beautifully appointed that this safe gets blasted out of with a shotgun.
I knew that thing was breaking. I knew that thing was breaking regardless of what happens.
And you look at it, and it looks like a Georgia O'Keeffe painting. I mean, if you don't know who Georgia O'Keeffe is, she's a renowned painter who's known for her paintings of flowers, but the flowers look like vaginas.
Vaginas.
Yeah, just straight up vaginas. You can't not see them when you see these flowers. And on my second watch through, I noticed that this painting, the stained glass window that this safe gets smashed through, it looks like a vagina. And so, there's these subtle touches that you don't notice the first time around, but they really start to tie together some of the things that I think the writers and the directors really wanted to put into this film. Nothing, and this is what I really appreciated, that again, it's because every single asset is constructed, almost every single asset is constructed by hand. They're not making anything that they don't need.
Exactly.
Like there really is no Chekhov's gun in a strop frame movie. And so everything that is done is with very careful consideration. Did they have to make this elaborate, really intricate stained glass window that you kind of only see for like 3 seconds? No, they didn't have to do it, but they knew that if they did, that it would make an impact. And I mean, for me, it was pretty amazing. The fact also that nobody can use a gun properly in this movie is also something that is great. And every single time a gun is misused, it's actually the most appropriate use for it in that moment. And this is, again, one of those like moment of how they were taking these gags and just making them work really, really well.
That's what I was saying with Paranorman last week, because every little thing is so deliberate and every little moment is so pined over. I could imagine there's not a whole lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. And then on top of that, it's not like when they don't shoot a scene over and over and be like, do it like it says in the script. Now just try this line. Now do an improv. Like it's not like that. Everything is so deliberate, like you were saying. And that the watching it multiple times thing, what you probably notice now is you see that stained glass window in the daytime too when they go to talk to her the first time. So now all you're going to be able to think about is how it's a Georgia O'Keeffe like painting, right? But you're also going to be noticing all the little things that he's looking at around the room. Because when you watch a movie like this for the first time, you're just taking it at face value. You're not really absorbing it the way you would absorb it on a second viewing. Like Paranorman is one that I absolutely want to go back and look through, because there's so many like ghosts and stuff that are in that like have their moments.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times these movies let the moments breathe so much more than a regular live action movie or a CGI thing where it's just throwing colors and.
Yeah. Remember that one ghost that looks like a vagina?
A stained glass window vagina.
Yeah.
I have a Home Alone of it all, but I think it might evolve as we go. So I think I might just do Home Alone of it all as kind of a segment later. But yeah, I kind of covered this whole scene, so I don't even know how you got this. There was oh, okay. So they escape. He gets the map and they bounce, and it's the next day because she's like, okay, we got to find them immediately. At this point, I'm realizing, because she hasn't turned into a hero yet, Lionel is a bit of an anti-hero, and this movie has 3 pretty defined villains. because she hasn't turned into a protagonist yet. So he's running from the main guy, the main Adventurers Guild guy. He's got the goon who has his goon buddies who are a whole crew. And now he's got his like...
Mr. Stank.
Mr. Stank.
Mr. Stank.
Or just Stank. Yeah. And then Stank is such a great character. We kind of glossed over, but when they first show him for the first time, I guess he got like half scalped or something.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the implication?
I think so. Something like that. He's got some weird scars carved into the top of his head.
That's what I took out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was, again, like a hairstyle choice, as in the way that they styled hair in the film. But on the second watch through, it really just looks like he got clawed real hard. And it makes sense, right? Because they reference the fact that later on, Lionel says to Stank, he's like, you have killed, so many cryptids, anything that you can that is not of the world, you've killed. So it's likely that in one of his encounters, he has this obsession with killing these things. He probably got injured
or got clawed on the top of the head by a bear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something, right? So
Skinwalker got him.
They didn't show any indigenous people in this movie, and also that's kind of like now a racist idea of indigenous people, the scalping thing. Mm-hmm. However, is it too late in history for scalping to still be like a pretty normal thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
And was it ever?
Yeah, I'm not really familiar. So, like with the history of scalping.
The history of scalping.
Yeah,
you're not well versed in the history of scalping.
I don't have enough information to speak upon it.
I think the idea of scalping also more recently was sort of revealed to be sort of a racist, like almost like a caricature.
Mm.
Yeah, I assume
sure it happened.
Wasn't a very common thing, but yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But the idea that like you're gonna get scalped, like maybe you don't think about it that way anymore.
No.
Right, but so they make it to a boat. She basically Lionel always gets found immediately, which I find really funny. They go through the whole rigmarole of he's dressed like a nun and Mr. Link's in a wheelchair and like a muumuu with like a newspaper over his face, and she immediately is like, "Oh, there they are."
And he's like, "Yes, you're right. It is me. How could you tell?" It's just like you still have a beard and everything. Like,
well, I don't even know how you got us. And then he just says, "Oh yeah, there was a nun. We mugged her." And the thug stole her clothes. The thug adventurer also shows up with them at that point. This is where they have a shootout that you were talking about, Naveed, where they're just using the guns wrong. She's actually kind of a skilled shooter because she's kind of like trying not to shoot to kill, is what it seemed like. Mm-hmm. But he's bad. Stink is bad, or Stank. Sorry, old Stink.
Mr. Stink.
He's a bad shot. And they do the old double bluff where they pretend like they're going to get onto the boat and then just walk off, and he gets on. The boat leaves without them. They're free for now. And I made a note that the shootout was well choreographed. I like well choreographed like fights and shootouts. And for a stop frame animation film, I forgot for a minute that it was stop frame or CGI or anything. I was just loving the fact that I like when they're like talking to each other and she's like
And she's shooting over the top of taking blind shots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. There was a lot of there's a lot of dynamic action that was all happening at once, which from a stop frame perspective
It's
is
crazy.
a very smart choice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but you pack a lot of action into a small amount of time, which just means you're doing less work.
Yeah.
And you're getting a huge payoff.
I like scenes that are very chaotic in movies, like whether it be live act, like when there's a lot of moving parts, or like the episode of Community where Troy walks back in with it's the meme where he walks back in with the pizzas and all this stuff has happened and it's kind of still happening. He's like, I love chaos on screen like that, and this sort of has that, and the saloon fight has that as well, where there's so many little things to look at that are all happening in like a very intricate ecosystem of chaos. I love it.
It's also not something you see in kids' movies very often.
No.
Is a full shootout, at least not anymore. And it's pleasant to see because it just goes to show you that you can still tell a pretty, child-friendly story and have these elements that people think are like forbidden. I was working on a project for a couple of years with some people, and there were all these rules that they would give to us, and it was almost like I understood why these rules would be there. But I would always bring up these examples like, but guys, we can still tell stories that are for kids and still have these violent aspects to them as long as we treat them respectfully and interestingly, and they're not just there to be gross gun porn or whatever, right? But the answer was always like, no guns, no weapons at all. I'm like, okay. So all the henchmen show up with
walkie-talkies. It reminds me of basically a professional wrestling historian at this point in like 1992-93 in WCW. They had a TV rights deal that indicated that no blood, which was fine because they didn't really do blood yet then on WCW WWF. But in WCW specifically, you weren't allowed to knock your opponent over the top rope. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched professional wrestling, but nowadays there's a guy hitting another guy over the top rope. It's pretty standard. But that's what that reminds me of. That, like, not being able to have like a good shootout in a kids movie. This scene wasn't violent. It was that's
what I'm saying is that this movie is a perfect example of how you can still do these things if you aren't going to set up all these rules at the beginning, right? Like if this was a Disney animated movie, there wouldn't be guns. There'd be no guns. They'd be like, there's no need for the guns. We don't need the guns. We'll just have them punch each other.
I think there's guns in Pocahontas, and that's like it from the 90s.
I know, but I'm talking about like now. I'm talking about if a movie like this came out in 2019, Frozen 2 is not going to have a machine gun in it,
Although Wish actually is all guns. Everybody has a gun.
Yeah, at the very beginning of the movie, they're like, I wish everybody had guns.
So they make it back to Europe. They want to find the Himalayan mountains and find Shangri-La. It is believed there is a Yeti civilization there. And we sort of get is this sequence where they have already made it to the Himalayan, the sort of base camp town?
Yeah, they're
because
going
they
to
do a long sequence of showing them traveling across like Europe. They go through Syria and Egypt and to India is where they finally land, and that's where the Himalayas are, right?
Yeah, India, Tibet area. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and this is where it's interesting because it's just an opportunity for them to do these funny little gags that lead them to the ultimate destination. And I thought about this when I was watching it through. Was it was it really necessary for them to stumble into this town and try to find this person who knows how to get to, the mountains to get to Shangri-La?
Yeah, he
Um,
immediately goes in there like a colonizer, weird English racist
and
person.
and exactly, and that is again, I think the reason why this scene was necessary. Because the map easily could have just pointed, X marks the spot, and this is how you get to, they could have done that. But the overarching theme of this, in the sense of colonialism and consumption, or claymation of the world, is something that is subtle in the beginning, and again, it's less subtle in this instance.
Hmm.
But they don't treat it with such heaviness either. The little grandma who ends up being the person that they need to speak to. Um, and
Gamu.
Gamu, yeah, and Gamu's daughter, who says, whatever you do, don't mention the chicken. And you're like, what is that?
I thought that was gonna be way bigger, but the
Yeah.
gag is just like she goes, "What chicken?" and that
Yeah,
made me chuckle.
yeah,
I wanted
yeah. And
to.
then again,
I
it's that moment where those gags, they don't get tired, because here again they go into the hut, and Lionel sees the chicken, doesn't say anything. Adelina sees the chicken, doesn't say anything. And then Link sees the chicken. He's like, "Yo, what's up with the chicken?" Like
immediately
just right away.
that we did skip over one sequence that I just want to go back to, and when they're on the boat, Mr. Blink is like baffled by it, and he looks out the window and he goes, "Oh my word, what is that?
Oh
The
yeah,
sky?"
this guy.
Which was great, but the reason why I would have just kept going, but this is actually the first time that we get Adelina confronting Lionel about his selfishness,
Hmm.
and they kind of have a bit of a meet cute, but not really. It's more like a reconnecting, I guess. And he's like, "Go talk to Mr. Link," and Mr. Link and Lionel have this great kind of early relationship, heart to heart, like the first time they really kind of open up to each other. And Mr. Stank is watching along, at the time, and he kind of ruins it. But I really liked the sentiment of Mr. Link wanting to find the Yetis, and he says, "Have you ever wanted something so bad that it hurt, like in your
Hmm.
stomach?"
Yeah, like
And
like it hurts so bad inside, like you have
like,
gas.
you have gas.
Yeah.
And Lionel's like, "Yeah, I want to be this great adventurer. And every time that I try to do anything, I'm sort of met with these roadblocks."
Hmm.
And I thought that that was just great
Yeah.
storytelling. And also, this is where he gets his name, Susan. We get the little story
Yeah.
about him being like, "Well, you didn't get a chance to name yourself, so you're free. You're traveling the world. What do you want to be called?" And he tells this little story about a prospector that came up into the forest where he lived during gold rush times, and basically she stopped and looked at him and didn't react, didn't get scared, right? Sort of reacted the way that Sir Lionel did, was more intrigued than anything. He's like, "Well, why don't you name yourself after them then? What was their name?" And she's like, "Susan," and he's like,
Yeah.
"That's a girl's name," and he's
His
like,
name. Yeah.
"That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
Sam
Yeah.
Squanch." And that's when I wrote down, "Is this Pierce Brosnan?"
Uh, Still didn't know.
I still didn't know at this point
Wow.
who Sir Lionel was.
Well, that tells us something about how you feel about Pierce Brosnan's heteronormative worldview. You couldn't possibly have a girl's
I
name.
don't know why. Yeah, that's who popped into my head right when this guy was being like kind of homophobic, maybe. But Stank grabs Adelina and holds her hostage. They have a scuffle. Susan helps by knocking Adelina overboard and punching Lionel in the head.
Hmm.
Stink chases Lionel around. Finally saves her. Oh, the good slapstick where she's like hanging and she falls and she's hanging. He pokes his head at Susan pokes his head out the window and sees her. She's like four
Yeah.
rooms over.
Windows
Finally
down.
gets to
Yeah.
her, grabs her by
And
the
then,
waist and pulls her in and just bashes her head.
yeah.
It's good stuff.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And it's why I was thinking to myself, I'm like, why did I laugh at that? But there's a it's like you didn't miss the opportunity for Susan to be grabbing Adelina and accidentally bonking her head as he pulls her through the window. And it's just there's again it's that innocence where it's like Mr. Link just wants to help
Just help to a
and
fault.
and is ready there, yes, to a fault, and is ready to help, but hasn't quite figured it all out yet, you know. And I think that's the two opposing worldviews. Mr. Link's innocent, bright-eyed worldview, like learning all about it as we go. And again, like you said, there's that powerful moment where he's like, "Is that the sky? Like, is it possible that it can be that big?" Because maybe he's never seen it that big in the prairies, where it's just this vast open nothingness and then sky. And then that juxtaposed with the worldview of everybody else that's there. It's like we're fighting, we're stealing, we're robbing, we're colonizing, and it's very not innocent, let's say.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really beautiful. Yeah, this whole little montage, as you're saying, was a lot of fun.
It was, and at this point of the movie, I'm forgetting that I didn't like the movie in the first half hour. Like I'm fully sold by this, and even right down to this next bit where like Stank is chasing Lionel around this ship, and it almost goes into a like Inception like sequence where the ship is going up these massive waves and going sideways, so they're like fighting around the hallway as the boat turns. I loved it. There was this.
It's crazy because like this is a sequence that could be in any movie and it would be just as exciting. And it almost feels out of place in this movie, but it works so well in this movie and this style, this medium, right?
The Goon Squad catches up to Link, and there was a funny line where he's like, "That's a monster, and she's defenseless."
Right.
Sorry, that monster has that defenseless woman, and she goes, "Defenseless," and he goes, "Monster."
Monster. Yeah.
But I forget how they escape here, because I'm like, they bounce on an escape boat. How did they get away here? I can't remember.
My mind is blanking as well.
Do they just
watched this today?
Yeah. Do they just kind of get on an escape boat and leave?
Oh wait, why can't none of us remember this? We literally just watched it 2 hours ago.
We all watched this today.
Well, they escape.
Right. So Stink reports to Bigfoot, and Stank goes back. I haven't started writing Stink at this point. Stink reports the Bigfoot to what's the Stephen Fry's name?
Yeah. Pigott Dunsby.
Yeah, Pigott Dunsby. He freaks out because he confirms that he's found Sasquatch.
Huge meltdown.
And this is the part we talked about where we get the travel montage. They make it to the town at the Himalayan mountains. English people suck at dealing with other cultures. Okay, so we can fast forward now to the yak stew scene, where they're eating the stew. I thought that somebody was gonna like it. That was a weird subversion there, but then like even the Sasquatch,
they just get on an escape boat. I just opened the movie. That's why we couldn't remember, because it's so like it's just like a whatever. Yeah. They just get on a boat and they're like, "See ya." Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, but the yak stew's bad. Even Mr. Link doesn't like it. Gamma is the elder who knows all, as you mentioned before, Naveed. Susan likes the yak cookies. Do you know what's funny about that sequence, that little moment, is I couldn't hear for some reason. I think there was like something happening in my peripheral and I got distracted for a second. And I didn't know what he was eating. And I was like, those cookies also look delicious. But you mentioned earlier that it's yak poop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they use it for fuel. And not only do they use it for fuel, they literally, moments before he eats it, stated openly, yes, we use yak poop as fuel. And I think you see Gamu, maybe, I can't remember exactly who, but put it on the fire.
Yes.
You know, it's like we're, and then in the next scene, and this is also like this scene is, it sits for a bit where we're watching Link, Mr. Link, eating this cookie and like just loving it, and this like,
It's
and this is
good.
what I enjoyed about this scene, where it's like he eats it, he's like, wow, and then he does his face, and he's like, that's really good, right? Like we're allowing this character to really present like his weird innocence again. And it was great. It was a fantastic little simple little subversion, as you said, of what we were expecting and then what we didn't get, and it still worked.
It's also funny that he's then grossed out by the yak stew, even though he's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
been eating
yeah,
yak shit.
He
yeah.
eats
He pooped.
squirrel
Yeah.
all the time. You'd think that that's why I thought the yak stew. They were.
He says that in the scene. He's like, "I'm a vegetarian, except
Mhm.
I'll eat meat sometimes. I eat squirrel all the time and chicken." And then he looks at the chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that it was going to be like one of them was going to be like, this is delicious because it looked gross, but I'm sure yak stew would be delicious, right?
Sure.
Could be.
I'd try it.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman says that it's delicious, but I don't know if he was lying or not because he's making a real gross out face.
Mhm.
Ew, this is delicious. Lionel finally asks about Shangri-La. It's not lost. It's actually hidden. It's no man, Sasquatch only, or Yetis, I guess. Susan reveals that he's a Sasquatch in his same way. I think he pulls his top off. And it's like, all he has to do, it's like a Clark Kent Superman thing where he just takes his shirt off and everybody's like,
Yeah, he like Hulk Hogan's his way out of the shirt. Yeah. And then
Gamu fucking dies.
yeah, she has a heart attack. And then immediately has another heart attack right afterwards.
And the daughter's like, you have to give the kiss of life. And then, I don't know, Mr. Link kisses her and then she's swayed. So she gifts the daughter as a guide and the directions so they can find the way. I think that's supposed to be like the Sherpa thing, but I don't know if you can. I don't think Sherpa. I think Sherpa is negative now. Anyway, guide. I think we say guide now.
A guide through the mountains, the mountain pass.
Yeah. They head up the mountains. Stank catches up with Gammo during this sequence as well, and the main bad guy, Piglet Pentecoat or whatever. I only saw his name written. They say it a couple times. I'm good with names in movies, but I cannot get this dude's name.
Yeah, I mean, I think they deliberately selected a name that is so obtusely douchey that
just some
doesn't
pretentious
register for
shitty.
you.
Yeah. Like my brain can't
Lord-
deal with
Lord
that level of pretension.
Piglet Dunsby. It's
Yeah.
just
Piglet
I mean, and it's
Dunsley.
Piglet Dunsby.
Piglet Dunsby.
Yeah, it's I mean, it fits.
It
That
does.
guy sucks. That guy really
He's the
sucks, and his
worst.
name sucks.
And he does something shitty here where he's like, well, Gamu doesn't matter if Gamu lives or dies. But do you know who we do have? The tiny
baby.
grandchild, which
Yeah.
I skipped over, but when we first meet the daughter, who I don't know if we get her name because that's one of those things I would have made a note of. But she comes and she like greets them at first, and she speaks English and she bends down. I think she bows to them or she bends down to get something off the ground. And the kid's on her back, and the kid blows a raspberry at them, and it was just great.
So
Just
good.
Jam things.
So funny.
More movie makers need to do that thing where they just jam things, so much stuff in every scene and in the background, and that's what I love. All my favorite like sitcoms. I'll bring up Community again. Community's great at doing that kind of stuff. Dan Harmon stuff, like the stuff that he makes, is always like look at Rick and Morty. Like on paper, it's just a stupid adult comedy, but he jams so much stuff into it. You know.
Yeah, every scene is dynamic. Yeah, even if it doesn't need to be, and it's dynamic in its simplicity. You can have simple, you can have simplicity and still be chaotic and meaningful, rather than it being. I mean, this is the difference between maybe the stop frame stuff that we're looking at versus full CGI stuff. Where look at like a Michael Bay movie. Like any Transformers movie, I don't know what's going on.
Michael
in
Bay
half
kind of
those
knows what he's
scenes.
doing. Like he's doing that deliberately because that's what he
Yeah.
wants to see in film. I learned today that Christopher Nolan loves the Fast and the Furious movies. He's like a huge fan. So like sometimes these like well-renowned directors, like they like stuff. I would say that this movie feels more like the humor of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
You know, where it's all like double speak and little gags and like really hard hitting jokes that aren't blue, aren't like they don't have to swear, they don't have to have violence. It's just it's good stuff. It's
and they're deep. They're like the jokes that happen, and then like a couple of seconds later, you're like, ha!
Yeah, grenade
You know, like
jokes.
it just like it has to sit with you for a minute. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what I enjoyed about the scene where the daughter meets them. She like bends over, and then this kid is like,
kid appears.
Yeah. Very good.
So up on the mountain, they make haste. They find the Bigfoot steps. They find an actual Yeti. They're taken kind of hostage, and it's not looking great for our crew. And we get the first. We see the ice bridge for the first time, which is one of my favorite things I've seen in a movie in a minute.
Yeah.
And they're taken to, I guess, the queen, who is, what's her face? Let me just pull this back up. It's
Emma Thompson.
Emma Thompson. Seconds.
I was waiting. You were taking too long.
Yeah, no, that's my bad. Also, we should say that Stank is Timothy Olyphant. I forgot. He was another one that I was trying to like put my hands on. Trying to figure out.
Who wouldn't want to? Who wouldn't want to put their hands on Timothy Olyphant?
He was perfect. He did a great job at being like that, like, you know, that foil character. And
he also has some pretty funny moments, like when he's threatening the old lady and he's got the gun pointed at her, and then Stephen Fry is like, "You mustn't threaten the old woman," and he's like, "The chicken," and he like raises the gun slightly to the chicken, and then she says, "What chicken?"
What chicken?
Yeah. So good.
That might be my favorite gag, because I expected it to be like, you mentioned the chicken and all hell breaks loose, but the fact that she doesn't know it, like I almost want to know more, but I also don't, because it's just so perfect that it's another subversion. I think that's going to be a theme through all four of these movies, where they set something up and the payoff is like so far from what you thought it was going to be. Paranorman does that, like has like four twists in it that I did not see coming, you know?
Yeah, it was very good. I mean, the chicken on the grandma's head, you know, without thinking too much about it, what is the point as a gag? They made it work really well. Subtextually, you know, what's on grandma's mind constantly. And then you can start to think about all the little funny ways that it doesn't even really mean anything to the viewer per se. But I wonder what was happening in the writer's room when they're building these characters, and how much of it is kind of a nod or an inside joke to the process that the team is a part of. And I know that stop frame films often have those Easter eggs that are just, or those inside jokes even, that are not, can never be understood by the viewer, and they're not meant to be understood by the viewer. They're strictly for the people who have made the film.
But that's how smart it is. It transcends.
Absolutely.
That.
Yeah.
And
it is great.
We're all going, what the hell does that mean?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this chicken quite a bit on this podcast alone. And to explain this joke to somebody, it doesn't sound funny. No. Like, if you're to be like, and then there's an old lady and she's got a chicken on her head, and it's hilarious. Everyone's like, why is that funny, though? And I'm like, I don't know, but it really is. Yeah.
Nobody knows, but it's provocative.
Threatening it, and like it's there. Yeah. And it's funny. I don't know, man.
So up on the old ice hill, I love the look. I love the blues and whites. It reminds me of like in a video game when you finally get to the ice like level. Them going up the hill. I don't know if you guys played Final Fantasy X, but as they go up the hill and they get encountered by the Yeti, reminds me of when you meet you have Kamari on your crew.
I thought you were going to bring up Uncharted, where they literally go to Shangri-La and fight Yeti, but...
Oh, no, I haven't. Well, spoilers. I've only played the first...
game came out like 20 years ago.
That's fine. That doesn't matter. Oh, speaking of which, Tim in the chat says Frozen would be dope with tons of guns.
Yeah. That's probably true.
Yeah, it's true.
We'll pass that note on.
Elsa just has fucking double...
Bob Iger, listen up, brother. Yeah. It's got to be a gun made of ice, though.
It's true. Some sort of ice gun that can get through TSA.
Uh-oh,
Jeez.
ideas.
Yeah.
Cancel again. How do you speak English so well? How do you know that we aren't speaking Yeti? Yeti was a funny line when they meet the queen.
Yeah, they never answer it either. It's just like that's just what we speak up
Yeah.
here. Don't
Yeah,
don't
it's
ask me again.
Yeah. Well, I think that's again, it really is like a meta joke of the whole I'm the colonial
Yeah.
white man who has the right to the world, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to claim it for myself. And how is it possible that you could also speak a language?
Yeah.
Um, and then I think on top of that, what I found to be quite funny was the fact that the two, I guess in this case, Crypt is the non-human characters that we're now encountering that speak. Mr. Lincoln now, Emma Thompson, the Yeti Queen. Both of them can speak fluent English,
Yeah.
and that's never the expectation in these types of movies where you're like, here's a monster. It couldn't possibly communicate with us. It's because it's so other to who we are.
We do get
Um,
shades. We do get shades though, because sometimes Mr. Link will exclaim and he'll growl like you would
Growl,
expect.
yeah. The animal side of him is still present. The natural side of him is still present, which I think again it speaks to his innocence in those moments where he's like, I'm still this, like wild person creature on the inside, and I know how to access it, or sometimes I don't. It's like that quality of a child sometimes where you're out there, you're exploring, you're seeing the world, you're so excited for it. But then sometimes you're gonna throw a little tantrum or have a little scream because that's just who you are.
Absolutely. They also call these Yeti call Susan Link, Mr. Link, a
Mm,
redneck
yeah.
because
Yeah.
he's
Country
from
cousin.
the United
Yeah.
States, you know.
Yeah.
And I felt my heart sank so hard because I knew it was coming. Obviously, like
Hmm.
they have this like weird society. There's so many of them. They're trying to keep it secret from humans. And then they see this person who's not like them. So then at the tail end of this movie, we get hit with like the realities of like racism. You know,
Hmm.
like there's a real big like anti-racism message in this film, which I think is important in a film about selflessness, because you just all all that Mr. Link wants to do is find people like him, because he's literally the last of his kind in a whole country, in a
Hmm.
whole continent. And he finally finds people that could possibly accept him. And they're like, "Nope, you're not a frost man with blue fur.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
redneck." And he goes, "Red." It's more like rust,
Autumn. Yeah. Rust. Yeah.
which was a
And
good.
again, and this is and I'll speak a little bit if you allow me to from my
Absolutely.
own personal lived experience as somebody who's considered to be a racial minority in the country in which we live here. And yeah, you end up sometimes feeling like you have to justify to somebody else the color of your skin or the reason why it is the way that it is. And it's a learned response, or it's an instinctual response. It's a survival tactic. It's a cultural thing. Like there's so many different ways that you can look at why that happens. But it's common for people to do that as a reaction. So to see that in his response in this movie, as in, it's like, well, it's like rust, or I'm like, I got a lot of autumn colors going on. It's that he's trying to justify to these people that he is the why he is the way that he is, from a place of like he almost feels guilty for not being what they want him to be. And that, as Jason, as you're saying, like, is a powerful message, right? We're talking about racism, and they're not shy about it here.
Which is, you have to teach these things to children in a way that's not so blunt, but this toes that line so well
Hmm.
that it, I knew immediately what the writers were going for, right?
Yeah.
But a kid watching this wouldn't. and would look to their parents for guidance, and hopefully they would get the correct guidance, right? But it's meant to be blunt
Yeah.
enough.
I'm just picturing some actual redneck in the theater being like,
Wow,
"There's
how dare they?
Yeah.
The people that live on the hill, that's a lot like, not a lot like, but a lot like Shangri-La, where I come from back in Halifax, in the Valley of Middleton, where everybody's literally white. They might take offense to a country bumpkin or a city slicker coming in and looking
Right.
slightly different. But this sort of systemic racism exists. I don't want to get too heavy, after your fantastic lived experience, but this sort of systemic racism exists within a lot of races that's what I sort of saw from this. Like the one that I kept thinking of is like how there is a bit of friction between like a light-skinned black people and dark-skinned black people, right? Like that's a thing that exists. And that's what I related this to as well, like not only people being visual minorities within a country, but also within their own communities,
Right.
being seen as different
Yeah.
or whatever. When at the end of the day, like we're all humans. They're both they're Yetis, and it should have been that like you look out for your own. But but there's this weird, like, you get this weird sense from these Yeti groups that they've been disconnected for so long and trying to protect this Shangri-La.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. This valley, when they show the valley, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, you gotta protect this valley.
But protect it from humans.
Yeah.
You know what
Well,
I
I
mean?
think that was the thing that, obviously the metaphorical racism is prevalent, but then she also is lumping him in with them, right? She considers him to be more human than Yeti, and just by association, like she hasn't taken 1 second to get to know him or understand who he is before casting this judgment, where it's like, well, you're with them, so obviously you're part of them, and that makes you one of them, so you're not welcome here. But you're also not welcome to leave, so we're going to put you in jail.
That's right. Yeah. Well, this is where I think the intersection of this sort of narrative about racism starts to mesh well with the whole point that is established right at the start of the film.
Yeah.
Which is Lionel is wanting to join this league of gentlemen and be accepted. Mr. Link is wanting to go to Shangri-La and live amongst his kind and be accepted. And now in this moment, it's very clear. The Yeti Queen says to Mr. Link, there is no place for you among us.
Yeah.
And then it's like, not only that, but then you remember what Lord Pigott Dunsby says to Lionel at the beginning. He's like, you are not a gentleman. You are not a member of you are not among us. And so suddenly both of them, one of them who is not having to deal with racism, and the other who is having to deal with racism, are faced very clearly with the exact same problem, that the place where they want to go and belong is not accepting them. And so now they're tied to that very, very clearly. And we see that this transpires through a little bit of exposition. Because I don't know, I guess sometimes these complex things need to be explained a little bit more clearly. But yeah, as Steve, as you're saying, it's like, there's no place for you here, but our secret now, so you can't leave.
Yeah.
And then they get thrown into the inescapable pit of isolation and miserable disappointment.
Yeah. This is also where we take our first steps into having their own group form, and they realize, like, no matter what we do, we're not going to be accepted amongst these other groups of people that we want to be part of, but we have each other at least. And that's where, the handshake means a little bit more than just respect for each other. It's compassion and love for one another, and realizing that they're part of the same club.
Yeah.
Which is sweet.
I also
It's so sweet.
just to bring a little bit of levity back, because that's as
And then they slip down the stairs and they go bing bong bong bing bong.
bang. No, but thank that was good. That was good stuff. I'm glad that we don't we shy away from that a little bit on this show sometimes, but this film has so much heart. And we got into it a little bit about bullying last week and stuff too. So it's interesting that these seemingly kids, people mistaking them for CGI movies, but they're very, very much not. They bring so many emotions up to the surface. But I will say, I did make a little joke to myself here. That credits thing that I was talking about earlier at the beginning, they get thrown in jail.
Jason's like a Sasquatch, a Yeti, and I don't know.
And an Ogopogo walk into a saloon, and they all just start punching the stuffed bust of old Hugh. But I'm not going to kill them, but instead put them in jail forever. Credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how the movie ends. It's not. But so... we get another pretty heavy, this movie is kind of heavy, not at face value, but when you really dig into it, we've covered a lot, and only now we're going into the end stretch of the movie here, and only now does Lionel finally get introspective about who he's being, who he wants to be. And he's still talking about himself. He's still talking about his goals. And Adelita wants to be in the... I write my notes all fucked. Adelita basically says he wants to be in the club so bad and only wants to join because he can't. He says that. Adelita asks why he's so hellbound.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. And Adelita's also pointing out that he only cares about himself.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the proof that you are that great man? Meanwhile, Mr. Link is laying on a slab of ice, writhing because he just got shut down, denied, and sent to a forever cave.
Yeah, his great dream has been shattered. He's been longing to get here. He wrote the greatest adventurer in the world a letter to help guide him here, and now he's been shut down. So he's absolutely shattered.
And Adelita absolutely bodies this man with this line. The great legend Mr. Frost is a myth.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Credits.
like the legends that he chases, right? He's the one who's going after these mythical creatures, and he's as much as a myth as they might be. But I think this is the cleverness of the writing here, is that he as a myth searching for mythical creatures is finding them, and in finding them he should be finding himself. And this is exactly what happens in this moment when Adelina says, it's because you feel like you can't belong. It's because you're looking in all the wrong places, and what you should be looking for is not those douches over at the gentleman's club. Look at this person who has trusted you and is right here ready to help you through anything and everything. And again, the thing that I appreciated here was that while it seemed a bit on the nose the first time around that I watched it, was like, why do we have to get this character to say to Lionel in this moment, here's the thing? But it's just because sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need somebody else to say, hey, can you get your head out of your ass for a second and look at what's right in front of you, please? And you have the option now to do something with it. And that, I think that's a real critical moment for Lionel's character, to go through all the things that he has, because even though over the course of his journey, he's tried a little bit to improve things and have those moments of growth, it always is still sort of self-interested, or, he'll say one thing and you're like, this is a great moment for him to turn. And then, in the next scene, he screws it up again. And I mean, we saw that on the boat where Mr. Link picks his name, and he has this really touching moment with Susan, and he says, great, well done, fantastic. And then as he's walking away, he's like, well, that was quite altruistic of me, wasn't it? And he's patting himself on the back. Mm-hmm. I think in this moment here, that leaves him entirely. He's no longer going to be self-interested. He's wanting now to connect with Mr. Link on a different level.
That's fantastic insight. Absolutely. I love how he sort of has learned so much throughout this film to this point that he's almost able to switch he's able to it's been a slow burn, but you do see him learn little bits throughout the movie, but at this moment he just says, okay, I'll drop the shit. I'll I'll talk to Mr. Link. We're going to get out of this place because we can't die in a place like this. And then they hatch the plan. You said everything that I would have wanted to convey much less eloquently. I was hanging on your every word there, so I'm a little bit. I'm sorry.
Wonderful.
I'm sorry to just move to the next thing.
No, we should, because the next thing that happens, Jason, is hijinks.
Yes,
where
exactly.
And we want the hijinks.
He tries to. I think it. Sorry. Does Mr. Link try to throw him up and he can't? But then throws Adelita and has no problem.
That's right.
A yeti falls down, and we look up, and it's a strong, independent woman doing it for herself.
Yep.
She's knocked out this guy with his own helmet, I think, or his shield.
Yeah.
And basically, they go to escape, like they're escaping, and then we get my favorite line of the whole movie. My favorite line in this whole movie is, "The people we don't want here are leaving. Force them to stay."
Yeah, very good.
I knew that was going to be your favorite line for some reason. I was like, Jason's going to love this.
Because it's like Simpsons writers wrote that line. Like it
feels
Futurama.
very...
Feels like what's the one-eyed person from... I can't remember her name.
Leela?
It's like a Leela line.
Yeah.
They fight their way, and they fight their way over the bridge halfway. They're met by the bad guy squad. It's basically just the nerd, Pigglesworth, and Stink.
Yep. Those are all definitely accurate names for them. Pigglesworth and Stink.
I immediately wrote, "There's too many people on this bridge."
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be more of a thing, but it's literally more of the villain freaking out and
he goes insane in this moment. He literally loses his mind.
Yeah. Like I thought it was I didn't expect him to do the sacrifice himself just to get rid of Lionel.
Well, I don't think he even realized that's what he was doing, because he was like, no one's going to know that you discovered this place. We are great men. You are not, and you're going to die here. And then he shoots the bridge, and you're like, you're going to die too. It's like he's so crazy that I think that he, for a moment there, believed that he is truly invincible, and no matter what happens in this moment, he's going to walk away, and Frost is not. Even his assistant is like, my lord, actually, you're going too close.
Well, he perishes first, I think.
He does.
Followed
by Nerd, as you called him.
Yeah.
His assistant.
Which I think was, if we consider that to be a death in the film, one of the saddest deaths, if not the saddest death.
That was the one
film.
that I was like, that guy should have survived.
Yeah.
I think that was Matt Lucas from Little Britain too.
Yeah.
But I feel like the reason why he didn't is telling of his character and the nature of his character in that context, where if you follow,
he's collateral damage fully.
He would have always died. In any other circumstance, he would have always died first.
Yeah, or
he would have been sacrificed in order. Yeah.
If they built the character more, he would have been the one, the person kind of helped, the turn
That's
face,
right.
Character.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I was shocked by his death because it was so abrupt.
It's so abrupt. Yeah, he just he kind of just and he just was at the back and he fell off.
Yeah.
The bridge collapsed and he just all right. He had some moments in the movie and then now he's just gone.
The way I look at that is that guy was willing to follow Pigglesworth anywhere and everywhere. So why shouldn't he also follow him to
death? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I kind of wrote this scene out as a stream of consciousness. As I was like watching it, I wrote, Lionel defends Susan to the bad boys. The dumb fuck shoots the floor of the bridge. Doesn't he know he'll die too? This is insane. Everyone makes it off the bridge except the bad guy and his writer guy. Stank on top with the three hanging, right? When they're
Stank
all
on top was my nickname in high school.
Lionel tricks him, and the final battle is basically a hanging slap fight. And this whole sequence is some of the most tense movie moment I've ever seen. I couldn't believe how, like, I was like, oh, every time, like, because, you know, hanging off.
It's exciting, man. There's nothing like a good bridge dangle in a movie, but this one was particularly good because you haven't really seen this style of bridge hang happen before. And it seems like it would be painful in so many different ways. The cold, the roughness of the ice, the slapping, the fact that they're all bound together. I kept thinking about like how uncomfortable that would probably be on your waist. The fact that the heaviest guy is at the bottom. It's all just, there's so much going on here.
This is what you mentioned at the top of Lionel must be like some sort of Superman.
Yeah. But then Stank also supports their way
also
too.
Superman, yeah.
I mean, they're both cryptozoologists who hunt down, and one kills and the other one researches mythical creatures. I guess they're both like weird superheroes.
It could be.
Yeah.
Link manages to hook the icicle. Stank falls, right? Because he's holding on with his pick or his axe.
I believe it's a pickaxe.
So this tussle I think, like, if I'm gonna recommend this movie, I recommend it for this final 10 minutes. You know, it's so good. And I don't want to just like explain what happens fully, but basically they're dangling and a bunch of shenanigans occur. But what happens is the final moment is, as Link's trying to like hold on to this icicle, it breaks and he ends up like catching another one, and the part of the icicle falls and catches Stank and impales him. And I think as he gets further away out of frame, there's like blood.
I didn't see the blood.
I didn't see the blood either.
You see what you want to see, I think.
Yeah. Jason paused his TV and went up and was like he started drawing blood on the TV. Like, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of red marker on my TV now.
Yeah, it's dry erase though. Don't worry.
Yeah. I actually wrote kind of brutal for a kids movie. They all survive. Susan saves the day, and they climb out alive. They look back at the Yeti. Link blows a massive raspberry.
And he tells her to get a haircut.
Yeah, he keeps saying a bunch of like insulting things,
and that her accent sucks.
Yeah. And Lionel's like,
and I thought that was so good.
Yeah.
In that moment,
because Lionel's going like, "Come on, keep it civil."
Yeah,
be the bigger person.
Be the bigger person. Yeah.
He's like, literally, they're both dragging him away by his hands, and he keeps turning back.
Which was great. It's funny.
Very funny.
And her face, like the look of horror that goes on across her face when she's getting the raspberry blown at her, is just like, it's very good.
Absolutely. They go back to the boat. They kind of, they all kind of high five moment. They tease a little bit of a kiss between Adelita and Lionel, but it doesn't happen. She's like, nope, I need to go on a great adventure for myself. Almost like they were hinting a sequel. A little bit. Like, I would watch a movie about Adelita just going and do her own thing and having her own misadventure. You're a great man.
That's what it could be called.
Misadventure.
MISS Adventure.
Adelita Misadventure. The shit writes itself. I like the line where she says, like, "You're a great man, but I deserve greater." But not like I deserve a greater man. I deserve a greater experience. You just learned how to be a person.
Yeah.
And I barely even got to like fist fight a Yeti.
Yeah.
She's gonna be a woman doing it for herself. And you know what? It's almost to that time in history where she's allowed to in this film universe.
Almost there.
Almost there.
Yeah.
She leaves, and I've been there before. Oh yeah, as she's leaving, you know, Link is like, I almost got kissed once. I mean, I haven't, but that's how I imagine it would go down for me too. I've been there before. That's how he.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the next adventure that they set up is the Fiji Mermaid, which is, of course, was proven to be just
a monkey stapled together with a fish.
With a fish.
Yeah.
And then frozen or freeze dried. Mr. Link is now his partner, much in the same way that Mr. Lint was. Where's Mr. Lint? Just dicking down in some brothels, I would imagine.
I really hope so.
Don't
I mean,
say
he's
things
got to
like
work through that trauma of getting eaten by Nessie almost. Yeah, come on.
So that's the film. Essentially, we get a great credit sequence where it's just sort of, you know, well animated, kind of showing their names, and there wasn't like a post credits, but there was like a drawing of them, sort of. That was nice.
Yeah, it's almost like they're going through a bunch of notes and blueprints and maps and all sorts of fun stuff, adventure-y things.
So,
Sorry, I was gonna say this movie, out of all of the Leica movies, I think does kind of have that flexibility for sequel energy, and I would be excited to see one, just based on like the fact that there are an endless amount of cryptids that could be looked for. You know, we could do some unicorns, we could do some leprechauns, even if it's just the cold open style stuff at the beginning,
which I loved, man,
which was great. It's what hooked me in immediately, where I was like, okay, it's going to be a movie about a Bigfoot. I like that, but I didn't know I was also going to get a Loch Ness monster in the first 10 minutes. And you know, as a kid, I was super duper into monster stuff. Like all of it was just my favorite stuff, like vampires and Frankensteins and werewolves and Loch Ness monsters. I loved all of it. This would have been a great movie for me as a child, but it was still good as an adult too. This is kind of turning into my final thoughts here by accident.
Well, we have a couple things before we get to that. And before we get to our final thoughts, we have to play a game. No, we have to talk to Kevin McAllister himself.
If you had to pick one, what do you think the Home Alone of it all?
When is the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone of
I
it all
really gotta
happens?
know.
When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all?
Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
So essentially, Naveed, if you don't know, or the listeners watching, the Home Alone of it all is basically the point of the movie Home Alone, where he slaps down the blueprints, and he's now going to do traps to these burglars, you know, and that's sort of what you go to see, like the point of the movie that you're like waiting for to happen.
Yeah, the fun and games.
Exactly. Yeah. Steve has posited that it is basically the trailer moments. We've also determined that sometimes it's just the third friggin' act. I will say that for me, it was more of a discovery. I'll just real simply, I'll say my Home Alone of it all for this movie was realizing that this was a straight man buffoon thing, like a grumpy old man, or like a what are those, the Odd Couple. Right. I've been searching for Odd Couple for 2.5 hours. Odd Couple,
more like 2.5 years.
Heyo. Wait,
that's how long the podcast has been going.
Right, that's true.
So that Odd Couple.
Yeah, my Home Alone of it all is when he fucking throws the rope. After that is like this movie has begun.
This is it. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I have one. In this movie, there's so many little things that happen, and everything is so differentiated by setting and tone and what the characters are going through, that I guess I would have to say when Bigfoot catches the note out of the air and reads it. That's probably the Home Alone of it all for me, but that's only like 15 minutes into the movie, so right at the beginning.
What about you?
Bam.
Do you have a?
Yeah, I mean there's so many. There are so many moments in the movie that I think are poignant enough to be that sort of thing. But you know, it's the thing that I think really makes the movie so humble is the fact that they continue to honor just the simple hijinks along the way. They cover all sorts of stuff, but if you could make a trailer out of just all of those silly moments of, like, Lionel getting thrown up but smashing into a wall, Adelina's head getting bumped. The scene where they're escaping from the ice palace, and Lionel and Adelina run out quickly through the curtain, but then Mr. Link comes out and it's just like this like bowl kind of like ringing, and it's rolling around. He's like, oh, like all these silly moments that just make the film and ground that film back in that reality of like, this is just a couple of silly people doing silly things. And that's okay. I think that's really what for me would be the Home Alone of it all. It's like that montage of all of these moments that really paint the picture of how grounded those characters are as they develop through the film. It always comes back to just having a laugh.
Cool. I really like that because, just as this whole movie is kind of it. This whole movie is like like that first half hour didn't grab me, but once I was grabbed, I was in. So like basically once he meets the Sasquatch, that's basically, I think we can kind of all agree that's, or we even like you said, Steve, when he grabs the note out of the air, it's like as soon as the Sasquatch is even recognized to be a thing, basically when they get back from the Loch Ness Monster after, like you said, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, why don't we play a quick game and then we'll do our final thoughts and then we'll get out of here. What do you think? Tim in the chat says, "Careful, I may just call you Stank on Top from now on, Steve." And then he went on to say, "Got to say you three have expressed the heartfelt storytelling that sets the movies aside for me. Great job to everyone." Well, thank you, Tim. Tim was on literally last
thank
week.
you, Tim.
And we'll be on very soon for the Iron Claw episode. Tim, you are a great man. Thank you. But now we're going to play the greatest game show in the history of the universe.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mystery Linkson. Mystery Linkson is my name, and I am the host of the greatest game show that happens on Twitch each and every week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I forgot that the show turns into a shitty radio station during this segment.
8 p.m.
Yeah.
Welcome to Piss Radio.
My name-
PISS FM. Piss FM.
My name is Master Linkerson, or whatever the shit I just said.
Linkerson?
The game is simple. I give you... You're guessing a five-digit number. It's the certificate rating for every movie. Every movie has a 5-digit number rating. It started at 1 in like the 1920s. At this point, this movie is at 51. I just want you to guess the next three numbers, and I'm going to tell you higher or lower. So you just need to give me a 3-digit number. You should get 2 guesses. Naveed, you're the guest. You go first, and we'll start it there. Just 3. The first 2 numbers are 5-1. I don't know. That doesn't help you at all. So
I mean, what I can only assume from a statistics and probability perspective is I should not guess 5 or 1 again, and I have a funny feeling I'm going to regret that. But I'm going to go with just a classic 0 to start off that sequence, and then end it with a solid 6 and an even more solid 9.
I see what you did there. So your guess is 51069. I'm going to tell you right now that it is higher. Steve, what's your guess?
Oof.
Higher than 69. Oh, man. Well, I guess I'm going to have to go with the predictable 420.
It's higher than 51420. Naveed, what's your final guess?
God.
Higher than 51420. Okay, let's go 511. Wait, I've gone the wrong way. I need to be higher than 420, don't
That's
I?
right. Yeah. The sex number.
So 51515.
Higher than that, Steve. What's your final guess?
The way Naveed read his number, it really confused my brain there. What was his number?
It's like 51515, I think. Something like that.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the devil's number 666.
It is.
Oh!
are bad at this game.
Wow.
Okay, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, people of Earth, human beings alike, it is 51866.
Oh, I knew it.
The MPAA,
Somewhere deep down inside.
everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
Wow.
Deeply talkative
Wow.
in the chat says, hey, did you see this one?
Wow.
And with that, it is now time. Thank you for playing, Naveed. Thank you. It's the stupidest game in the history of
Absolute
games.
pleasure.
It is now time for our what? I'm looking at the goddamn.
It's time
Sorry.
for our final thoughts.
Gee whiz.
Hey, did you see this one? It's time for our final thoughts. Basically, just give your final thoughts, and if you have like a rating, whether it be like serious or jokey, hit us with it. And of course, just like at the top of the show, our guests go first. So Naveed, hit us with your final thoughts.
Oh boy. Well, let's keep it short and sweet. I think we've sort of shared how much we enjoyed this movie. I think the thing that really summed it up for me was doodly dee doodly doo boop boop doop doop doo. That song at the end of the film really just wraps it all up with a tidy little bow, because it just comes back to it being about two guys out in the world having fun, learning together, and not taking things too seriously, even though there's a lot of serious stuff going on. So, that for me is kind of the short and sweet of it. That it was a great film, and I think that I didn't believe it the first time I watched it. So I'm glad that I had an opportunity to watch it a couple of times, and now I got to go back and watch it again. Specifically, the scene with the icicle impalement, because I need to know if there was blood.
Mhm.
And do you have like a rating you would give this film?
Yeah, I mean, 2 out of 2 fuzzy Sasquatch thumbs right up. I against all odds.
That's awesome. Thank you, Naveed. Steve, what's your final thought for the film?
Well, the first time I watched this movie, I kind of ranked it lower on my Leica rankings. Out of the 4 movies we're doing this month, I was kind of like, this movie's good, but it's not my favorite of the 4. I still don't know if I would call it my favorite of the 4, but watching it again so close together with Paranorman, though I love Paranorman, I actually like this movie a lot more the second time around than I thought I was going to. And I think it goes to show what you were saying, Naveed, to be true, that watching this movie a couple more times, you unlock a little bit more contextual subtext, I guess, that I didn't really take in the first go around, as well as a lot of just like the flat, dry humor that you get from almost like British comedy. Even though this isn't a British comedy, it is rife with those sort of British comedic sensibilities, which I am very into. The storytelling is fantastic. The pacing is great. The editing is amazing. But more so than anything else, it's just so freaking beautiful to look at. From the opening frame to the closing frame, the movie is breathtaking. A lot of the time, it reminds me of like a Wes Anderson movie. Just sort of in its framing and the use of everything on screen. But I could talk about it forever. The rating. If the rating was, if my expectations of the movie could be encapsulated in the plaster cast of Bigfoot's foot, it would be the entirety of that plaster cast. But then it would also be the size of the second footprint we get later on in the movie that's put down by the Yeti, which is slightly bigger. So it's good. It's good.
Thank you, Steve. For my final thought, I made a mistake. So just a little spoiler. I did write down that I gave it a 3.6 out of 5, but I actually like Steve, liked this better in retrospect. especially through talking about it, than Paranorman, which I gave a 3.8. So with that in mind, nice story about not being selfish and being a more selfless person. I thought it was going to go one way, and I was pleasantly surprised how it changes around when they get to the saloon fight bit. I thought the textures and animation were a lot better than Paranorman, but I suppose that's 6 years difference in technology and like learned animation style. The score I found to be a bit generic, but that's like my only real nitpick. Zach Galifianakis was genuinely funny as Susan Link, and I would watch another adventure of theirs. So 3.9 out of 5, because I need to leave room for Kubo, which I'm predicting to be one of my greatest movies, and also Coraline.
I'm worried you're hyping Kubo up
I'm
little
doing
bit too hard for yourself.
I think that I might be, but it looks so fucking good. I give this movie one lovable rust-colored Sasquatch out of a whole utopia of asshole blue frost dickhead yetis. Heart warmed.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you. I love that.
I love sound effects. So I guess that's pretty much the show for tonight. We're gonna watch the Laika video again before we get out of here, but I think. Oh, actually, sorry, Naveed. Do you have anything that you would like to plug, or do you have a message for the world?
Yeah, not so much plug these days. But message for the world, give everything a second chance. I think at the very least, as human beings, we can have the patience to give something another chance. I'm
Naveed, is
glad
this how
that
you
I
tell the
did.
world to vote for Donald Trump again?
I immediately retract my statement. Don't. Okay. Think critically about the things that you might give a second.
Okay.
Sorry. No,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to trample over your beautiful
Oh,
statement.
we know
no,
what we meant.
it's a double-edged sword, that statement. But yeah, I only say that because if not, I might not have had an opportunity to have this wonderful conversation with both of you guys. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for
Thank
being
you for
on.
being here. Yeah.
Just before we get out of here, I just want to say thank you for everybody who watched tonight. Thank you for everybody in the chat. Check out Nifty Neat Club. You can find us on all social media at Hey Did You See This One. All of our episodes are up in fully in audio format and video format on YouTube. Basically, just like I think when you search "Hey Did You See This One" on Google at this point, we come up, which is great. Which means that we have a little bit of algorithm effect, and I hope that 2024 continues that way. So just give us a follow. It's free.
Tell your friends.
And tell your friends. Tell one person. All 9 of you. Tell one person that you watched this show and give them our at and give them my home phone number if you would like. It's 421-743-58. 7. Not going to give you the last digit. Also, on top of that, my address is 14 Williburn Nightingale Crescent. No, don't do that joke.
2 random people are going to get phone calls and mail.
Yeah.
But at this point of the show, there's one final question that needs to be asked. So, Naveed, would you like to ask that question?
Absolutely. And what's this show called again, guys? Seriously, though, I think it's something along the lines of, is this a thing that you saw that one time? Hey, have you seen this?
So close.
Hey, did you watch this that time? Once upon a time that we did?
You're so close.
Did we see it there before and we came back to it now? Am I close?
I swear to God. All I need.
Hey, guys, come on. I'm messing with you. Hey, did you see this one? Oh.
In a world where creativity is buried and dead, a mysterious movie studio lies in waiting, tinkering away with the tools used for captivating audiences, with heartwarming stories crafted through the exquisite art of stop-frame animation. It's time to take your first steps, or perhaps revisit them, on a whimsical journey where the magic of this unique technique unfolds, immersing you in a world of wonder and enchantment and shadow. But amidst the captivating visuals, when the world seems dark and life feels like a heavy raincoat, "Hey, did you see this one?" reminds you to slow down and take things frame by frame.
Oh,
I
wow.
felt like I was gonna barf
Wow.
that whole time that Naveed was trying to remember
Wow.
the name of the show.
Well, it'll be a good TikTok.
It really rolls off the tongue, guys. Hey, did you see this one?